So this webinar is about ways to tell if you should not or should work in a law firm. It's based on my experience and other people's experience about whether or not a law firm is a good fit for you, and even if you should continue to work practicing law. And every attorney really needs to reflect on whether or not they should be working in a law firm and it's the right place for you. What I've seen throughout my career and also in myself is that a lot of attorneys really should not continue to work in a law firm. It's not the right place for everyone. And there's a lot of reasons why you probably shouldn't continue to work in a law firm for a lot of people. People choose this as a career, but they're not really suited to it. And if you're not suited to a law firm, then you'll go through a lot of problems because you're not necessarily a person that will thrive there. And I've worked with literally thousands of attorneys and throughout my stage of my career, and a lot of people end up being very unhappy because they're in an environment that doesn't necessarily fit them, and they've had a lot of problems, and they're not people that can succeed there. So if you're in if you're not in a law firm, then I mean, if you're trying to get into a law firm and succeed there, then you may not be the kind of person that should be in a law firm. And other people will actually walk away from working in a law firm too soon when they might be the type of people that are actually should be working there. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about three simple ways that you can tell if you should continue to work in a law firm, because you may actually have, the right background in terms of the way you think about things, and whether or not you're just starting out. What I'm going to talk to you about, or you've been there a long time, I'm going to talk to you about insights that will help you understand if this is something that you should be doing, and you may not be. So when I was young, in my last year of law school, a professor of mine who'd been told he was not actually getting tenure from the law school and he was leaving and really had nothing to lose, gave me some advice. And it was advice that really, upset me at the time. But he told me that, I shouldn't be practicing law. He told me I should be doing something else. And at the time, I was actually very surprised because I had very good grades in law school. I'd been associate at a really good law firm in New York, and I was getting ready to do a federal clerkship, and I was on law review, and I had kind of all the qualifications that I thought that would make me, qualified to practice in law, and also practicing law in a really good law firm. So I was very arrogant. I thought that with my background, with my grades, the fact that I was doing very well at the University of Virginia, which is a top law school, I really figured that I was the kind of person that should be practicing in a large law firm, because I had very good grades at a top law school and was doing very well in all my classes. And I figured that I was, someone that really should be working there. And when he said that to me, I asked him kind of what he meant, and because I was very shocked and I was angered by it, and I was kind of taken back. It was the kind of statement where, sometimes people say something to you and it really kind of shocks you and you're upset, and you kind of actually can feel it like in your body. And he said, look at all these kids and in their study groups and how they pour over details. And we're actually in an office where there was a window and you could see into the law library, and everyone, looking at their books and very serious. And he said, look at all these kids and their study groups and they love it. And he said that they, are very focused when they're reading things. And, you're just kind of looking at them. He said, they're pouring over details and they love it. And he said, you're nothing, like the kids that are in these study groups. And he said, look at these kids, they love it. And he said, you probably never been in a study group, have you? And I'd actually never been in a study group. When I was, a first year student, wasn't in a study group. I was never in a study group. I just kind of didn't want to do it. And I said, to him, I prefer to study on my own. And he said, right. And, he said, other kids, get charged up working in teams. He said, you probably also hate a lot of these like small details. And he said, this kind of stuff for these kids, they actually like it. They like discussing details. They like they get kind of, they get excited by it. And he said, I bet you think these, details, and this sort of thing are, something that annoys you. And he said that these kids go into these details, and it's something that you really like. And he said, kids, for myself, when I looked at the kids that were going over these details, that were something that got them, excited. And he was kind of talking about the personalities of these kids, like that they liked it. And, he concluded that I should stop trying to be an attorney, like in a law firm. And I said to him, and it was actually true, like, I didn't like the kind of personality and things that these kids had that were probably all going to go on. A lot of them are, in big law firms. I asked him, what should I do? And he said, I don't know. You got the best grade in my class writing about the internet. And at that time, the internet was very new. And he said, maybe you should write or do something entrepreneurial with the internet. I have no idea. But he said, you'll never be happy in a law firm. He said, you like the law, but you might, have some role in a law firm. I mean, you might have some role in the law, but not in a law firm. And you might have some role in the legal firm, but in the legal world, but not a law firm. And at the time, it was true. I mean, I did like to write, and I was very entrepreneurial. I had a business all through law school that got me I was very happy about when I was doing this business, which was contracting. I really liked it, and I would write, papers to hand out to people, like long brochures and things that other people weren't doing, and I liked it, but I didn't, that working in a law firm was not something that excited me, and it wasn't something, the details and the type of work that I was doing as a summer associate wasn't something that excited me. Other things excited me. So I liked writing, which you can see that I obviously do today. I like speaking about things, which you can see I obviously do today. But he said, you're not, gonna like working in a law firm. And he was a very smart guy. He'd gone to Yale Law School and he'd worked in a couple of major firms. And so he said that to me. And, it was something, that I didn't end up liking. And I didn't listen to him. I went headfirst in the legal firm. And I learned the ropes, and I learned that what he said was correct. And I didn't really like ever working in a law firm. And when I did a federal clerkship, when I came out of law school, it was the same thing. There was another clerk I worked with, and she was very excited about it. And the judge was very interested in very small details when I was writing, so I would make typos and things that I probably shouldn't have made. And so I never really got excited about it. It was kind of something where I would do the work, reading cases and things, but it wasn't something that I liked. And I actually ended up, when I was in my clerkship, I ended up losing the job. So but by towards the end of the first year, the judge actually came to me, called me into his office, and he was upset that I'd made a typo in a memo that I'd written to him that was very insightful, like good writing and things, but I'd made a typo in it, and he didn't like typos, and I'd made them before, and so I ended up actually losing the job, and then I went into a law firm, and I was good at writing, I was good at going and doing motions in court and so forth, but it wasn't in going to court. I was good at it. I started my career at Quinn Emanuel, and then after that, I went to Dewey Ballantyne, which at the time was a top law firm. But when I did the work, even though I did well, I was able to do well. It wasn't something that got me excited. And sometimes when you're doing work, doing anything, there's things to get you charged up where you actually should be doing that as a career because it gets you excited. And you have you just there's something about different types of work that make you excited. So for me, it was entrepreneurial work, it was writing, but not necessarily of the type of details and things where when you're practicing law, you're actually sitting at a desk most of the time. You're writing things and you're doing, whether it's contracts or it's writing as, inside a law firm, there's things that about that make you, give you life. And what I mean by life is that if you're doing the work gets you charged up and you're excited about it. And it's something that you love. And so you have to really think, is this the type of thing where I'm doing the work and it's something that, that makes me love and gives me energy. So when you're working at anything, is your life force like supported, by doing the work? And a lot of attorneys make the same mistake I did. They go to work in a law firm, even though it's not something that gives them satisfaction. And, every day, I'm coming across, attorneys that I can see from their resume that they've made a mistake working in a law firm. I can see people trying to get new jobs that made the mistake working in a law firm. And every day, I'm coming across people, that are you shouldn't be there or realizing they shouldn't make those mistakes. And so the professor I was talking to, he really had the ability to look at someone and based on these factors, very quickly figure out, whether or not someone was suited to it. He could see those personalities. He understood those personalities. He understood how, people interact with others and the material he was teaching, and he was able to access that. And he was a very smart person. He was, again, had gone to Yale Law School. He was top of his class, he said, and could see that. And it's also interesting that people that go to Yale Law School, a high percentage of them compared to other law schools don't actually ever go to work in a law firm. They do things in the government that excite them. They do other things and public interest, and they can actually they're smart enough to realize that they shouldn't probably be working in a law firm. And so decades later, I can see that. And a lot of the people that I speak with, because of the way that my career works, I have to be talking to people. I only do law firm placements, and I work at, with attorneys from top law firms. I talk to them every day, and the majority of people, that I work with are top people. Some are associates, some have, but large books of business, some don't. And these people that are looking for positions and trying to figure out what they should do, I can tell whether or not they should be doing it. I can tell it with partners, I can tell it with associates, and I can tell, whether or not they're suited to working in a law firm environment. And, even partners in large law firms that come to me, some of them, you talk to them and they're interested in going in-house, or they've never, bounced between law firms and they're unhappy, and they go home at night and they're unhappy. And you may be in that position where work in a law firm and you're unhappy and you don't know why. And it could be just the law firm you're in, but many times it's not. So, I can tell right away whether or not someone belongs in a law firm. I'm going to tell you whether or not you should be there today and the reasons why. And really, in order to understand that, I'm going to talk about, three simple questions right now, and whether or not you can assess for yourself whether your attorney that should be in a law firm, and often just the practice of law. And I'm going to help you, if you should be working there, how you can convey that so you'll get more offers and a better chance of a fulfilling and productively career. And when law firms are talking to you, when you go out for interviews, a lot of times there are people that go out and they have, several interviews and they never get a job. And one of the reasons for that is, because of these reasons. And some people will go out to interviews and they'll get every job. And so when you're interviewing with firms, they can often tell very, very quickly whether or not you should be in a law firm practicing law. I have a guy right now that went to Columbia Law School, and he was at the top of his class. He was a Harlan Fistone Scholar, and he's bounced between 4 or 5 law firms. He's going, I mean, interviews so far. He's not getting jobs. He doesn't know why, and he's very, he's very upset, and because other, people that went to Columbia with him are in top law firms, and he's not getting jobs, and he's not getting jobs because he goes out and he's conveying the wrong things. And you may be going out to interview with law firms and not wondering why you shouldn't be there, why you're not getting jobs. And I'm going to talk about why that is today, because when you go out for interviews, especially with, partners and things that have been practicing a long time, they can understand whether or not you should be there. So, if you shouldn't be at a law firm, it's never a judgment about you as a person. It's just that this environment is not a place, whether or not you should be there, and whether or not your credentials are good. You need to come to this realization sooner rather than later, and it can save you years of pain and frustration and motivate you to probably explore a more fulfilling path. And one thing I'll tell you too, just at the outset, is there are, a lot of people that walk out of law firms and they go into having these incredible careers, being entrepreneurs. I know people, that have made hundreds of millions of dollars doing other things, even though, they went to a top law school, or even though they maybe didn't go to a top law school and they channel that motivation into something else. And so, I'm going to describe the type of candidate right now I see more and more in this type of person that's not suited to be in a law firm. And then I'm going to tell you, based on my opinion, whether or not you should be there. So here, right now is the type of people that shouldn't be suited in a law firm, regardless of your credentials. I've seen, people that literally have gone to top law schools. They go out and interview, and these are people that, look right from the start, whether or not they look like they should be there. And so this one woman I was working with, went to a top 10 law school. She had, the type of credentials where it looked like she should be in a top law firm, but this woman literally went on 30 interviews because people will like to interview people with good qualifications. And this person went through at least 30 interviews with law firms before one made her an offer. And, when I see people like this, the candidate I was talking about, that went to top, before this woman, he was so frustrated that I was talking to him last Friday. And I think he was drunk, and it was in the middle of the afternoon because he was, he was trying to cover up his pain of how much he disliked it. And there are people like that. I mean, they go out and there's just, pain associated with it and they don't like it. And so, this law firm that actually did make her an offer, I work very hard on behalf of my candidates and I can get people interviews. I'm very good at it. I can position them with cover letters and with the way I respond to emails and things from the firm and the way I talk to law firms. I can get them interviews. But this woman that I actually got a job, I'm sure, it shouldn't have been practiced, would not last there very long. And I would be surprised if this is the one I'm talking about right now, shouldn't be working there. And, for many attorneys like her, these top, credentials actually are a detriment because, if you shouldn't be working in there, in top law firm and you have top credentials, a lot of people will think, that they should be in a top law firm. And, anytime you have any reason to think that you're special, you're unique, or better than others, then you're automatically going to be kind of on the defenses. And if you have a sense that, you're better than your colleagues, that like people that go to top law schools do, you're always going to be, have issues with any firm, you're thinking. Because if you think you're better because of your qualifications, which a lot of people do, people get into law firms and they're going to kind of be, expelled like a virus. So you go into a law firm and you're not succeeding, maybe you have top credentials, but you're not succeeding there, and the law firms are kind of pushing you out. You may not know, you may not even know why, and this person had a sense of, entitlement. So when she would go out and all the law firms she was interviewing with were not, top law firms, she was kind of, evaluating, but evaluated whether or not, she should be there. So she was actually kind of interviewing the law firms, and she didn't like working in a law office. That was not something that she got her excited. She wanted to take Fridays off, and she thought that if a law firm wanted FaceTime, then, she wasn't interested in working for them. And she wanted to know if the law firm was flexible in their, compensation. So, she wanted a minimum amount of compensation, but, that this person was $250,000 a year. She was a couple years out of law school. She expected, a bonus. She expected a reasonable billable hour requirement. So if the law firm had too much work, it was considered a sweatshop. She didn't want to be involved. She wanted, she wanted to, be in a place, that was financially stable. She wanted to continually be promoted. So she was asking about how she'd get promoted, and so this is how interview after interview went. Law firms, were eager to reject her because, she often, even would, take a pass. And so she was, the law firm, tell them she didn't want to work there. And she was smart, she was attractive, which law firms like people that are, look good a lot of times. She was well spoken. And she had great qualifications, but after her first couple interviews, I let her know that the law firms didn't care about that, and it was like me, like she was, when I went out on a lot of interviews. So when I was a summer associate, I probably got 20 interviews, and to be a summer associate, and I only got one offer, which I was lucky to get. It was because of someone that knew someone that I was interviewing with very well. It was a friend, and so people that are from top law schools, they often believe that law firms should hire them, but the law firms can pick up on these things I'm going to talk about. And so this woman was very shocked. People believe that their backgrounds are often something that will make them successful. And people, if they don't care, they'll say, what, no one cares where I went to, law school. Why is that? So you may think that your qualifications are very, very good and you're not getting interviews. Or even if you don't have the best qualification, I mean, not closing interviews. And even if you do have not good qualifications, if the law firms are interviewing you, anytime a law firm is interviewing you, they believe based on your, your background that you should be, that you're someone that could work there. But law firms actually will not, your interviews will not lead to offers. So, if you're going out on a lot of interviews and nothing positive is happening to you, what I'm going to talk about right now are the things that law firms are seeing. Because I will just be completely honest with you so you understand. If a law firm is interviewing you, they are, just give me one second. They believe based on what they're seeing in your, on your resume that you could be someone that, you are someone, one second, I'm just fixing this. You are someone that could, that they could make money off of, that your background looks like that. So here's the three simple questions, and these are questions that I always will, that I'll always, that I can tell very, very quickly whether or not someone, should be working there. And these are the qualifications that what our law firms are asking. And so when they look at you, they're asking whether or not you can do the work that they have. They're very, very interested in whether or not you can be managed. And they're also very, very interested if you look like someone that will be able to work in that law firm for a long period of time. Like when you're interviewing, are you someone that looks like you're going to be there? And firms generally, can't figure out those questions when they're interviewing you in law school, but a lot of them can, a very high percentage. People can understand the answer to these questions when you're in your first year of practice, so they can very quickly figure this out. And if if you've been in the law firm, I mean, if you're, if even if you've been in there, a short period of time, they can figure this out. So, why did you not, succeed in your first law firm job? Why are people asking you to leave? And often people are 6 months in, even to a major law firm, and the law firms will ask you to leave, or you'll be a summer associate and you won't get a job, or you get there and you're unhappy and you don't understand why. And so, when I evaluate these three questions in the context of an attorney and the ones I've been discussing, it can be readily apparent like why they shouldn't be working in a law firm, and why, that the law firm can anticipate very, very quickly whether or not they should be in a law firm. So the first one is, can you do the job? And so this question is pretty simple. Like they're asking whether or not you can do the work that they have. So they'll look at your educational qualifications. They'll often look at, if you're going to a second law firm, they'll look at, whether or not your qualifications look like you can do the work that they have. So this person I was talking about, based on her qualifications, having gone to a top law school, they, look at, whether or not the person can do the job. And they can tell this very, very quickly. They can tell this based on, how long, for many attorneys you've been at a law firm. They can tell, if you've moved too many times. They'll ask you sometimes like, how many hours have you been billing? So many times you'll get into a law firm and you will, and this is very, very common for attorneys from top law schools, they will get into a law firm and people will give them a lot of repeat work. And so if they're billing, but they won't give other people repeat work. So you can be in a law firm and the people you're working with will like the quality of your work. They can tell, whether or not, you can do the work. So they'll ask how many jobs. And, people that can't do the work, will often be asked to leave or not succeed. And within 2 or 3 years, they're often, out of a law firm. They'll get bad reviews. They will not be interested in the work. They will complain about it to others, and they'll often turn in poor work product, and the game's over, or other things. And so, there's more to answering this question of whether or not you can do the job than assessing your qualifications or the fact, you've been there. So, the one of the biggest things you can ask is like, do you care about this? Like, how much do you care about it? And does it, many people will be like, they'll get into a law firm and they'll think, oh, this is stupid, or, there's reasons I don't like it. So, when you're in there, is it something that you really care about? Like, do you think this is important? And, do you care about the law and do you care about the job at hand? And, caring about the job at hand often means, people that work in law firms are actually very motivated by helping companies or helping other people. They think it's very important. They have these, excitement about it, and they're really moved by it. So they're asking, and just think about that. Like if you're representing a client, do you think that this is a really big deal? Like you're excited, and you're excited based on your ability to do research and turn in good contracts and all the things that corporate attorneys do, or writing. And so, if you go into an interview and you have a passion for this and a genuine interest in a law firm and what you can do in that area of law and being in a law firm, I mean, are you interested in writing papers about your practice area? Are you interested in speaking about your practice area? Do you go out to, do you take clients and you're interested in the client? You're really trying to do the best you can. They can often see that in your resume. It's very interesting. Like the people that are very interested in being corporate attorneys will list all their transactions on their resume, and they'll go out to law firms and they will be very, very excited about, whether it's doing immigration and helping immigrants, or it's family law and helping family, or helping people getting divorced. So people, can often, they will pick that up. They will interview with people, and those people will talk about all the work that they've done, the clients, and those sorts of things. They can, understand that. And just think about, if you were interviewing someone, to, help you with something, whether or not, it was a nanny in your house or it was a doctor, like you would look at that person and just see how excited they are about it. Like doctors, for example, very, they think it's a really big deal, like helping people, overcome diseases, or helping them in an emergency room. They think it's really cool and a big deal. They're motivated by it if that's what they should be doing. And other people will think it's stupid. And other people will, doctors will, join committees and write papers and things. And if you go out to talk to that doctor, like, just based on, what they're saying to you, you're going to be more motivated by someone that really is, it likes that, and you can tell, and they're, very motivated by it. And those are the people that you would want to help you. And the same thing if you need an attorney. If you need an attorney to help you with, you're accused of a crime or something, you would want someone that is very, very excited about criminal law and can help you, get off, whatever, and is motivated by it. You can pick that up. And so, are you that kind of person? Like, are you the kind of person that you would want to hire if you need an attorney? Like someone, you talk to them and they're just very, very interested in what they're doing and they're talking about it and they're excited, and that would be the kind of person you would want to help you. And just, when you talk about people that are like public defenders and stuff that could help you, a lot of them aren't enthusiastic, and that's why they may not have the best jobs, the most prestigious jobs and so forth, because they're not excited. So, people can pick that up. Like if you go out on interviews, is this something that you're very excited about? And are you able to convey that to people? And some people are. I mean, it's just, I know an immigration attorney, and she's very, very good. And she's giving talks and papers, and she's, very excited. Like, I got this person a visa and no one else could do it. And that's someone that can do the work. And, is that you? Are you very enthusiastic about this? Think about that. Like, can you see yourself in 10 years being this incredible expert, someone that, that you're going to be very, very excited about helping this company with litigation, or helping this person with so forth with something? And that's what you have to be. Like, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. If you're going into law firms and you're not excited about it, you're thinking, I can do something else in the future. I'm just doing this for a few years, or I don't know why, people are, other people are advancing and so forth. Those are people that can do the jobs, and people at law firms can pick that up very, very quickly. Are you enthusiastic about it? Is this something that you like? Because if you're doing something that you like, like you're going to continually get better and better at it, and you're going to learn things and you're going to be excited about it. So firms can realize and appreciate that people, those types of people, very, very quickly. So, and again, whether or not you're going to be an attorney, regardless of whether or not you practice in a law firm, you need to be very enthusiastic and excited about the area of law you're in and what it involves. And, right now, I mean, I'm, 25 or no, 30 years out of law school, and I'm doing this webinar today, and I'm very, very excited about what I do. And that's why I write papers, and that's why I do these sorts of things, because it's something that gives me a satisfaction, like in my soul. But a lot of times people are in work that doesn't. And so, law firms, can very, very quickly, pick that up. And one reason that the woman I was talking about, that went on 30 interviews, she, the way she was discussing things turned off employers. And really what it was is it was because, she wasn't, motivated by it. And they can pick this up, and they can pick up, whether or not you have interest in the work. And so all these questions, were revolving around herself and her schedule. And if you're really motivated by something, you're not going to be excited. You're not going to be asking questions about the hours. You're not going to be asking questions about, time off. She didn't have any questions about the work itself, like what type of clients would I be representing? What type of responsibility would I get? Do you have enough of this type of work in my practice area? Because I'm very interested in this practice area and I want to get better at it. And, can I do more sophisticated work? How long would it be till I got that? And those are the sorts of things that someone that really wants to do it are excited about. I knew one guy that he had top qualifications. He went to Northwestern. He clerked for two, appellate clerkship and some other things. And he got into a law firm right when he graduated. And he was very, very motivated by doing white collar criminal defense. And so he went out and asked all these questions about would he get this experience? Would he be able to do it? And he went into a law firm and they didn't have enough of that. They gave him commercial litigation and he refused to do it because he's like, I'm not interested in this. Basically, I think it's stupid. And so he, and then he didn't take that type of work because he was so motivated by doing this practice area. And when he didn't take it, he ended up not getting jobs. Not doing well there and getting fired. And so, people, when they're interviewing, like if you're interviewing with a law firm and, and you're getting, they're talking about what you're good to do, you'll think, why this is so cool. And they'll talk about, when they talking about transactions, they'll think, wow, I've done a lot of similar transactions to the, this, and I really, this is so cool, and this is how I did it, and or going there into interviews and thinking about when you're talking to attorneys in the law firm, are you like, wow, this is really neat, they're doing this, or wow, they're not doing enough of this, and you'll think it's cool, and it's, so you have to really like the job. You have to think, is when you're talking to firms, are you like very interested in it? Are you reading the firm website and the bios of people and thinking this is something that's really meaningful to this? And so, when law firms are interviewing you, they can figure that out because you're going to be talking about the work in a way that you're excited about. Like you have to be excited if you're a patent attorney about writing really good patents. It has to, and you have to, when you go into interviews, you have to be like, wow, I wrote one like this. And that's really interesting. You do that. You have more of this type of work. How would I get more of this type of work? That's what you're thinking. And so and when you're thinking that, people can pick that up. And that's the type of person that they want. And so if you come out, even if you don't have often the best qualifications, there are attorneys that I work with that may not have gone to a top law school, but they get into law firms and they do very well. And then they interview and they do very well and they get into top law firms because they're just very excited about the work. And if you're excited about the work, then you're continually get better and better because you're interviewing people and they can tell again, with you, like the level of enthusiasm you have. And so the woman I'm talking about did not get any offers because she wasn't going out and she wasn't acting very, very enthusiastic. And so, she was kind of interviewing. She's like, okay, if the work is there, I'll do it. I don't want, I want to be able to work at home because, my personal life and where I'm working is more important than being in the office and getting a lot of this type of work or being able to get more of this type of work. I don't want to have to work a lot of hours because this is not something that I'm interested in. And so if you think about this for a moment, would you hire someone that you interviewed with that was more interested in these things than the work? Would you, hire someone that over other attorneys that was very excited about the cases and transactions? If you're a client thinking about yourself, would you want to hire someone with such a dry approach towards the work? Meaning, if you were a client, when you were talking to your attorney, if the person's like very excited about it and they want to do a really good job and they want to, make sure they put everything they can into this transaction or into this litigation to do the best job possible for you, would you want that person? And so think about this. There's so many attorneys that will go out and they're thinking about the hours, they're thinking about, the working at home, they're thinking more about the compensation, the type of work that they're doing. Like that's not someone, if you were a client and the client was more, and your attorney was more concerned with their hours than the work and so forth, would you want to hire that people with that person? Would you want that person working on your behalf? Would you want a doctor that was more concerned about not working a lot of hours in your disease or whatever, or would you want to hire that person? And so, if you're thinking about just the hours you're going to bill and you're thinking about just your compensation, you're not like thinking about the type of work that you're doing, you're more concerned about that. And so are you interviewing people and thinking not about the work? Is that something that you're not excited about? And if you're thinking more about that than how the work that you're doing and getting excited about, that's something you need to really consider, because if you're doing something and you're not and you don't really like it and you're not thinking more about the work that you're doing than other things, like why is that? Why are you more concerned about those things than the work you're doing? Because people that should be doing this are thinking more about the work, and that's excited to them. Different people, like in our company, some people are very excited about they're very excited about being able to talk to candidates and get interviews. They think that's like the coolest thing in the world, and that's something that they like. They want to prepare attorneys. They want to do all this. Other people will be very concerned about financial things, and they're thinking, very, very a lot about how can they do finance very, very well, and how can they, benefit the company by managing money, or they're thinking about, being a recruiter and getting people jobs and how well they can do that, and doing it with different types of people, not just type people from top law firms, but people from other types of law firms that may not be top law firms, and getting them into places that they normally wouldn't get into. So, in my profession, when I hire recruiters, actually I'm very, very, push people out very, very quickly that are more interested in just their compensation than, they ask about compensation. They don't think about like how they can help people and how they can get people into different types of law firms and how they can give people advice and things that are going to make them do better. And this is what I'm doing right now. Like I'm very, very suited to this because I'm trying to help you. But if I wasn't, I wouldn't be giving these webinars. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be writing the articles I do. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be trying to work with people and help them, help all these people do things. And so I'm suited to what I'm doing. But a lot of people, recruiters come to our company and they're not. They're just, they're more concerned with their time off. They're more concerned with easy placements and candidates that are very, very easy to place. They're not concerned about different types of people. And so I don't like that. And I expel them like a virus. And so and I just, because I'm not nice to them, I don't like the way they think about it, because I don't think that that benefits candidates. And so they come into work for me and they're more concerned about all these other things like easy placements and their hours and, and just and not the candidates and not helping people. So I don't like them and I get rid of them. And so it's very, very hard to be a recruiter here, because I'm practicing at a very high level doing what I do. And so because these people don't care about the work, so they I don't like that. They're not passionate about it. And I don't like that, because those are the people that I want representing clients, which are candidates. And those are the people that I want here. I don't want people that don't care. And so to have longevity in anything, you need to be passionate about it. That's what law firms think too. Like the best law firms want people that are passionate about the work. And so if you're interviewing someone, if the law firm's interviewing someone and they don't have that, partners that have been doing it for a long time and are good at it will look at you and they'll say this person's not passionate, but they're not passionate about their practice area. They're not passionate about working in a law firm because maybe they've left law firms to go and to work for a company. Like that's very, very obvious to people. So if you are thinking more about working in-house, then you shouldn't be in a law firm. And so people with the best qualifications, like I'm working with one guy right now, he started out at a top law firm. He did two clerkships, like very, very good clerkships. Then he got jobs with two very good law firms, and he was at each of them for 5 years. And then he went in-house. And so now people that are interviewing him for in-house jobs are, I mean, for law firm jobs, don't like that. They don't like that someone left that environment because if you leave the environment and you go to work in another environment, then the odds are, you're not, that's not something that you're, that you want to do. So if you don't want to do it, like then you're obviously not suited to there because if you leave the law firm environment, you're concerned about something else. You're concerned about maybe working on one client, or you're concerned about your hours that the law firm has, or you're concerned about all these sorts of things. And if you're concerned about that, then you don't belong there. That's why law firms, if you go in-house, it's very interesting. So there's a lot of corporate attorneys, for example, in the Bay Area. There's corporate attorneys that went to very, very good law schools. They may have worked in, they may have gotten jobs in top law firms, but then they left. And so even in environments, there are environments like in the Bay Area where there's a huge demand for corporate attorneys. I mean, there's not enough corporate attorneys. Law firms are unable to, adequately staff people. But then when they see it, even if they have an incredible need for someone, if they see people that have gone in-house, they don't like it. And so if they don't like the people that have gone in-house, meaning they aren't going to like them compared to other people, because the people that are in law firms, they will see those people and those are the people that they're going to hire. They're going to hire people that stuck with law firms. If you lose your job in a law firm and you're unemployed, like that's a big sign because if you've lost your job, the people that stay and don't lose their jobs are people that really like law firm environments. And that's why they do well there. And the people that don't like the law firm environments and don't have that enthusiasm for the work lose their job. So if you're in New York, for example, and even if you went to a top law school, and you're unemployed, if you're unemployed because you lost your job, you're probably not the type of person that really likes that. So the law firms will have the ability to look at people that are employed in law firms. And then if they see people that aren't employed, because there's so many candidates competing for jobs, the law firms will think because they have so many people, this person probably wasn't suited to it. So they lost their job. Why would we take a risk on this person? So the law firm really wants to know, can you do this work? Or, do you look like the person that, if you can do the work and you're enthusiastic about it and you're really have that enthusiasm for the work, then you're going to be employed. And the law firms will see that. And if they see that, then that you are still employed. You obviously the law firm wouldn't keep you around in most cases if you really like the work and could do the work. So doing the work is about being able to work the hours of the law firm. Doing the work means, really being motivated by helping clients solve problems. So, again, if you're really motivated by helping clients solve problems and you're willing to work extra hours and things to help them do it, then why would a law firm let you go? Because they want the best people working on their clients. You would do the same thing. So if you were confronted with 10 people, but you only had enough work for 5 people, the 5 people that you chose not to lay off would be people that are servicing your clients in the best possible way and doing the best possible work. And those are the type of people that you would want to keep around. You wouldn't want to keep around people that aren't enthusiastic about the work. You would want people there that are very enthusiastic, that are doing a good job for your clients, and your clients are picking that up. And if the clients lose that person working on their transactions or their litigation, the clients are going to be upset because when the clients talk to that person, the person is just very, very enthusiastic about the work. They're trying to find all these angles and stuff to do well. And you're picking that up and you want to make sure that that person stays there. So that's, kind of the first reason is, can you do the job? And the job means a lot of things, but the job is the hours. The job is, if they want you in the office, it's working in the office. You're going to be excited about working with partners and talking to partners about their work live, as opposed to in a, a chat room or something, or, or a Zoom. That's what's going to be exciting to you. So the first reason is, can you do the work? Just 1 second. I apologize. I'm in actually a hotel. That was a maid showing up. That's one reason I wasn't able to get in this webinar in time. Okay, so the next one is, can you be managed? And so law firms are asking whether or not you're someone that can be managed. And so being managed means you go into a law firm and you will do what they want. You will be able to be a person that's able to take instructions, that will work the hours that the law firm needs you to do. And so the candidate, and you'll be someone that is able to, basically do what the law firm wants. You won't resist any type of management, meaning, people that work in law firms need to be managed by others. They need to be people that will be willing to follow instructions. There'll be people that are willing to work in hierarchical environments. And so the attorney that I was discussing wasn't someone that could be managed by others. She basically expected, to manage herself and to manage things. And so, many partners, 1 second again. In many attorneys and partners in law firms can't be managed. It's very interesting to me too, and this is just something to think about. So I have partners that, have huge books of business, like, $30 million and that sort of thing. But when you talk to them, it's very interesting. They will talk about, what the, the committee, thinks, or what the, and they will talk about what their other partners think. And so they literally will be in a top law firm, but they will be people that rely on being managed, and they will follow whatever the law firm needs from them, and they will do whatever the law firm needs. So the law firms will often have all these metrics that they evaluate people that are management metrics. It will be things like, even, giving talks. They will get credit for that, or they'll get credit for, bringing in a certain amount of business. And so that will be a management, or they'll get credit for the type of clients they bring in. And so they will have all these metrics that these top law firms will manage them by, and they will do it. Like, that's important to them. Like, they want to do what the law firm requires of them. And that's why they advance. They're more concerned. They're very concerned about the way the law firm manages them, and they will do the management things that the law firm wants. But many times when you see partners that, even if they have, a certain amount of work, they're people that can't be managed. They resist management. They resist people that are above them, or people that committees that might not even have the business. I mean, the people on committees may not even have as much work as they have, and the people that are evaluating their compensation, but they're very concerned about the way the firm manages them, and they will either like it or not. And some people will actually, the best attorneys will often, like this management, and they will do the things that the law firm wants to manage them. And sometimes the management is not good, and so they will leave, but they want to go to a place that manages them well. So are you going to a law firm, and are you thinking about the way the law firm is going to manage you? And is that even something that, if you are you that's a challenge to you, and you will want to do it the best you can being managed. And so, or you will resist that. So many partners and associates that shouldn't be there will resist all forms of management, and they won't like it. And it doesn't really matter where they are. They just won't like being managed. They want to be independent. And if you want to be too independent, then you don't belong in the law firm environment, because that's not what you can do. You're always going to be managed by people. Even if you have business, you'll be managed. If you don't, if you're a junior attorney, you'll be managed. If you're, a mid-level attorney and you're not doing, you can't be managed. And so someone that can't be managed is obviously a bad fit for a law firm. Why are they a bad fit? Because you wouldn't want to hire someone either that can't be managed. Like, you would want to hire people that's going to follow your instructions. So if you hired, for example, a nanny to work in your house, and the nanny wouldn't listen to what you want, and they wouldn't be there, like, they wouldn't, if you needed them to work extra hours, they would refuse. They was just like, that's not what I do. Because if you're, they're going to be mad if you're late, because that, that they don't respect the way you manage things. You wouldn't want to hire someone like that. And if you were, a hospital and you were hiring someone and the person refused to, different things, you wouldn't want to hire them. So anybody that's working in an environment, any type of environment that can't be managed is a liability, because if they can't be managed, then they're not gonna do things the way your clients need or the way they need. And so this is a big problem. And this is one of the things that I see in attorneys all the time when they're trying to work in a law firm environment. They're complaining about the management, they're complaining about the way things are done, and they go into a new place and they're complaining about the management. So, if you have someone that you're hiring that thinks they're better than, that won't do what the law firm wants, they're having all these questions and interviews, about, what's important to them, not what's important to the management. So, if you're working in an environment, you're concerned about doing what other people want you to do when they're managing you. Then you'll be seeking promises and commitments in the law firm when you go in, for lower hours or weekdays off or the ability not to have FaceTime and stuff. Law firms aren't going to like that, because why? If they need you in the office for some important legal matter that their client wants, that's going to be something that you will do. You're going to be managed by the law firm. And sometimes, the management is not good. I mean, it's not good for you. They may want, you may, not like that management and want to go some other place, but you have to actually be the type of person that wants to be managed by others. And you have to think about that. Like myself, like I'm too entrepreneurial. Like I can't stand, I wouldn't succeed, because I would be very hard to manage, because it's just not something that I want necessarily. And so people that are succeeding are people that are, being managed. And so if you hire someone and you need something from them and they refuse to do it because they want lower hours and so forth, or if you're going to interviews and you're seeking all these sorts of commitments from the management about, being managed in a certain way, like that may not be something that's important to you, because you have to, the only way you can succeed in any law firm is if you're going to be someone that can be managed. And being managed means you're going to do what that management requires of you. And that's going to be something that you're going to, you know, commit to, you're going to be fine with. And so, and you're going to like the fact that someone's giving you rules and things that you can meet and succeed, but you're going to be very concerned about what people above you want. So partners will want to manage you. The law firm the law firm will often have review committees and stuff, which are about how well you're going to be managed. You go into reviews, it's going to be about your work quality, but it's going to be about doing the things that the law firm wants and the way that they want it and the way the law firm expects things done. And you're going to try to, work on the way things want to be done. I know people, like I had a friend that was very, very suited to work in a law firm, and he would get a review. And when he got the review, he was getting good reviews. And so, he would, I went over to his house and he left it out. And, I went over to his house and his wife was like, oh, he's doing, the things that they want. And he's getting good reviews. And because he's getting good reviews, he's going to succeed. And she's very excited about it. And she's like, did you do this? Did you do this? And his wife will go out and, talk to people and they would say good things about him, and she would get excited about that, and he was excited about that. And all these reviews and stuff are about your work quality, but they're also about what people say about you, and people are going to say good things about you in reviews and so forth if you're doing things the way they want them to be done. And that means being managed. And so anybody that succeeds will be managed. So do you resist, or do you not like the fact that other people are managing you? And think about that. Like this is again another important point. Are you someone that will follow instructions? Are you someone that likes the predictability of being managed? Are you someone that likes that? And so in any law firm, large law firms, you're going to have groups of people that don't like being managed. They're going to have criticisms about the management. They're going to have criticisms about the people that are giving them things to do work. They're not going to like certain types of things. They're not going to like all this sort of stuff, so they will not like it. And people that don't like it, if you were managing someone and you needed someone to do things in a way you wanted them to do that was working for you, whatever type of person that was, like a nanny or a doctor or anybody that's doing work from you for you that you're, I guess a doctor's not a good example, but that you're, managing, if you have to manage someone that works for you, you wouldn't want them resisting your instructions. That would make you very mad. And in a law firm, if there's certain people that aren't able to be managed, that's going to make them very mad. They're going to want to push those people out. You would too. Like, think about it. Just if someone that was working for you and it was important for you that they do certain things and they follow your instructions, and then the people that don't, like, you would not like that. And I don't like that either. Like, if people are working for me and I'm asking them, when we represent a client, a candidate, we will interview them. I will have them, the recruiters write letters on behalf of the candidates in a certain way. I will have my recruiters make sure that they're always available during work hours. Like, if they're, that they're always, responding to emails from candidates and law firms, that they're always picking up the phone when the phone rings. And there are people that won't. They'll think, oh, this is stupid. I don't need to answer the phone, because a lot of times my candidates may not be getting interviews, not the people I want to talk about. Law firms, that they want to interview people, will wait, for my response. I do not want to write cover letters and things, and I don't want to go into a lot of depth and take that extra time that Harrison requires. And they won't like that, and they'll say, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, why does Harrison expect that? Then they will talk to other recruiters and they'll say, isn't this crazy that, that he expects that? This is not fair. And so I won't be able to manage them. And because I can't manage them, I won't like them. And I will be very, very hard on them. And I've been sued before because of people don't like it. I was sued before because there was one woman that didn't, buy into the way we work. So if you're working here, you're getting, text, and if I'm representing you, or you're getting all these emails from us that are, since this particular woman didn't like that. She thought that it was more important for her to be conveying all this information and doing things not the way the company wanted. So she would actually go in to the profiles and things of the candidate she was representing. She would delete their email addresses. And so she could control everything. And so the company wasn't able to manage the candidates, and because the law firm's managing the candidates and the law firm's also managing the recruiters. So she went in, she didn't like that. So she deleted their email addresses because she wanted to do all this. And I got very upset with her, like, on a public meeting. And so she hired an attorney, and basically after doing that, after hiring an attorney, she quit. And then when she quit, the attorney, wrote me all these letters and things, and it became, a lawsuit that I got rid of. But at the same time, this was someone that resisted management. So are you resisting management? And in our company, like, again, people don't think it's important to write cover letters. Those are people that are resisting management, and I will push out. There are people that don't think it's important to always be available for emails and things coming from the law firm. Those are people that I will push out. There are people, I had a recruiter that I hired recently, and she quit very, very quickly. And the reason she quit, I mean, it's actually very, very interesting. She was a recruiter that had worked in another recruiting firm, and in that recruiting firm she had to do cold calls and all these things to find candidates, and so she quit because she didn't like the way that the law firm was managing her, the recruiting firm was managing her. So then she came to work for us, and she was told she always had to be responding to emails, she had to do the work in a certain way, and she had to represent the candidates that I assigned to her, not the candidates that she wanted to. So she didn't like that. But the big thing she didn't like is that she was required to, we have something where we call it the CCP, where all the emails all the emails that are coming in from candidates and law firms are all put into basically this database. And she needed to work on this database because the database emails would all go into the candidate's profile. They would go into the law firm's profile. And so we track every email from our candidates. Every email that you may send to BCG, or any email that we send to you, is actually tracked. So we know all this stuff, and people actually have to go in to this thing and respond to emails on our online system, and they have to work on our online system. She refused to do that. She's like, I don't, have the time to log into the database every time an email comes in. This is ridiculous. Why would you require this? I'm not going to do it. And so again, I became very upset with her because that's a way to manage people. I have other people that may be working here that are expected to do certain things and they won't. So the people that succeed, the people that are here for, 10 or 20 years, and I have people working that have been working for here for our company for 25 years. All that they do, they may make mistakes and things, but their primary motivation is doing things in the way I want them done. So because they do things in the way I want them done and they're motivated by that, I'm nice to them and I make them feel good about their work, and they work in a way that that they're managed, and they will feel they will do it, and they'll do it in a certain way. And oftentimes these are people many times that aren't even, they're not in major markets. They're in they may be working in Utah. I have a lot of people in Utah, or they may be working in the Philippines, and I have a lot of people in the Philippines. But all of these people succeed will do things in the way that I want them done. And many times people in larger markets will bounce around between recruiting firms and things, and because they don't do things that the way the recruiting firm wants them done, or I mean, or the employer wants them done. And so people that aren't doing things in the way the employer wants them done are people that don't succeed, and they lose jobs, and they're often unemployed, and they're often unhappy wherever they go because they won't do things in the way that the recruiting firm wants them done, and they won't do things maybe when they're practicing law in the way that the recruiting for that the company, that the law firm wants them done. It's very interesting. I give this example a lot, but I'll give it again. So when I first started recruiting, I attracted, because I was, I was doing well, and I was doing well than any single recruiter in the United States. I was just doing extremely well. I was placing, more people than any recruiter had ever placed. And so I was getting people that knew that, the people in the market knew that, people that interviewed with me knew that. I was getting hiring recruiters. And so two of the first recruiters I hired, one person had been at her last job like 18 years, and the other been in her last job 8 years. And when those people started, they just kept asking questions like, how do you want this done? Like, how can I meet your expectations better? How can I do all these things? And then I also hired people that I thought would be good recruiters because they went to Harvard Law School and they worked in a major firm, or they went to Berkeley and then they got a job in this major firm, but they lost their jobs. And so they were unemployed. So I was interviewing these people. I'm like, this is someone that should definitely be working in a top law firm. And I would try to get them jobs, and the law firms wouldn't hire them. And so I'd be like, this person, I can hire them as a recruiter. They're obviously going to do very well because they had, been able to do extremely well in college, extremely well getting these jobs, but they were unemployed. And so those people might have been at their job 1 year, or they might have been at two jobs in 2 years. And those people would start, and they would immediately, almost immediately start not doing things the way I wanted them done. They wouldn't write cover letters in the way that they wanted them done. They wouldn't, be available for candidates the way I wanted them done. And then because they weren't doing that, they would talk to other recruiters and they would say, "This is ridiculous. This doesn't matter in the way he wants them done." So they would literally come in and they would resist everything the way I wanted it to be done. It would make me extremely upset, and I would talk to them about it. They would also go and talk to other recruiters and say, "This is stupid the way he wants them." So they would lower the morale of everyone that was there because they didn't like to do things they wanted them done. And they would make me mad because they were resisting not doing things I wanted them done. And all these things that they were resisting not doing things they wanted them done were hurting the candidates, and they were hurting my ability to manage other people because other people were also, that were doing things the way I wanted them done would resist it. But the people that lasted and stayed, that I hired the last job, they were at 8 years, and the last job they were at 18 years. They weren't at recruiting firms, they were law firms. They all succeeded. Like, they put their head down. They knew that to succeed, they would have to do things I wanted them done, and they would do those things the way I wanted them done, and they would succeed and do extremely well and make a lot of money. and be happy in their jobs. And, people that I've hired that do that are do very well. Again, one of my other first hires was a woman that was my second wife and I stayed with for 12 years. But when I hired her, she had lost a job in a law firm, not because she was not following instructions, but because that law firm was doing an area of law where there was a partner that lost all her work, or no, the partner that was leaving the firm, and so the law firm didn't have any more of that work. So I hired her, and when I hired her, she, told me that I have to succeed in this job. I'm just going to do whatever Harrison wants. I'm going to do it the way he wants it done. I'm going to follow his instructions. I'm going to do everything because I have to succeed in this. Like I have no more opportunities. And so one of the things that we require recruiters to do is to do these cover letters in a certain way. We require them to be working in the office a certain amount of time. We require them to work with a certain number of candidates, new people each week, because doing that is going to keep them engaged and they're going to learn. The more candidates they represent, the more they're going to learn about how to place all these different people. So she did everything in the way I wanted it done. And her first year, she made more placements than any other recruiter in the firm, even though she was new and there were other people that had been there longer because she did everything the way I wanted it done. I was so excited about that I did the wrong thing, but I started dating her and then married her, and she just followed all my instructions, and that made her successful. And I was just very enthusiastic about her as a person, and I would take her out, and because I just that made me very happy, and I was excited that someone would do what I wanted. And so that's very important. Like if you can go to a firm and you do things the way they want them done, you're probably going to succeed. And if you don't, and that's not something that you can do, you're probably not going to succeed. And so if you don't do things that way, and you're not willing to follow management and you can't do that, then you're not going to succeed. So yeah, are you able to follow management and do things the way they want them done? And, partners that are at law firms succeed are doing things the way the firm wants them done. Associates succeed are doing things in the way that a law firm wants them done. And if you're doing that, you're not necessarily you're not going to be the type of person that's against the firm. You're not going to be the kind of person that will succeed. I mean, partners again will defer to management. The best associates will defer to management, and that's how they succeed because the law firm wants them to do things a certain way. And also I just want to tell you about one thing that's very important. So there are groups in every law firm. There are other associates that there are always going to be associates that will come to you and talk about, this is unfair the way they want it. I don't like this. Like this is not cool. And because they don't do that, they will find and they will attract other people, or they will lower the morale. They will seek out people and try to talk to them about how bad management is, how unfair the law firm wants things done this way. And they will be against this management, and they will be part of groups of people in the law firm that are resisting management. And so they will be parts of these groups that are negativity towards the law firm. And so people will get into these groups, and then because they're in part of those groups, the law firm will be, push them out. They will be expelled like a virus. And so people that don't follow management are always expelled from law firms. The law firm expels them, and because they're like a virus. And so every law firm is always expelling these viruses. They need people that are following management. And so viruses can be partners, viruses can be associates. And so these are like diseases that are in every law firm that the best law firms push out, and they will just push them out. And so that's how it happens. And they will know if you're part of this group of negativity. They will know based on the way that you follow instructions that you're not going to be good. One of the saddest examples, and again, I have so many examples, but some of the examples are better than others. One of the biggest examples that I saw where someone failed. I was working with a guy. He'd gone to University of Chicago Law School. He'd been at the very top of his class, and he went to work in a law firm. And he got there and he was working for a junior partner. And the junior partner said to him, I want you to go spend the next 6 weeks, writing a memo and really investigating this issue and giving me all the information that you can find on this issue, and then come talk to me about it in 6 weeks, and work very hard on this particular matter. And so he started the work. He's a very, very smart guy. And then within like a day and a half, he came back and he said, it's not necessary for me to do all this work. Like this is the answer to your question. I don't need to, write these memos and find all this extra information. And he did this for a junior partner that wanted these hours billed. This was important to him. He wanted to make money and he wanted to do all this work. And so he came back and he said, I don't need to do all this work. This is stupid. And the partner said, well, you need to do it because I asked you to do it. And then he was very, very resentful. He went and talked to other associates about how this person was unethical. He went and made that, his dissatisfaction known to that partner. And then he went and even tried to recruit other partners to his side. And so he was a virus and he got fired, and he was only 6 months into his job. And because he got fired, no one wanted to talk to him. Like, because he was in a market, he was 6 months out, he lost his job. So he wasn't able to get interviews. And so he did get a couple interviews, but when he went on those interviews, he didn't succeed because they picked up the fact that he couldn't be managed. And so he lost his job and he became very, very depressed. He decided to take some time off, and then he decided that he was just going to start his own practice, and he became a criminal law attorney representing drunk drivers and that sort of thing, which is astonishing because think about someone with that type of background, unable to get a job, losing their job, and having to become a job that is not the most prestigious or not the best paying job. So he lost his position and wasn't able to get things and became, a very low paid criminal law attorney where he started out. And I saw his resume, 10 years later when he came back to BCG, and he had never gotten a job in a top law firm again because he couldn't be managed. Think about the example I gave you of the guy that went into a firm that didn't have enough criminal law work, white collar work, and he refused to do it, and he lost his job because he couldn't be managed by the firm. He didn't want to do the commercial litigation. So he lost his job. And this guy with these top qualifications became a contract attorney because law firms picked up that he wouldn't be managed. So anybody that's not doing things the way the law firm wants and resist it anytime that they become part of groups that they won't do things they want. Anytime, you're going into interviews and you're more concerned about different things than doing things than the way the law firm wants. And if you're not doing things in the way the law firm wants, how can the law firm have one person in there that's an associate and so forth that is just like this person that refuses to do things the way they want? You wouldn't hire someone like that. And the law firm, if they have that person there, how can they manage the other people if those other people are expected to do things in the way the law firm wants? So no good law firm is going to hire someone that can't be managed. And so are you that person? And if you are, again, like if you can't do the work in a certain way that they want, or you can't be managed in the way they want, you're not going to do well. And you're going to lose jobs, and you're never going to succeed in a law firm environment because any organization, whether it's BCG Attorney Search or any law firm that's not doing things, the person that's not doing things in the way they want will lose their job, and they won't succeed, and they will. That's just what's important to them. And so you have to think that that's very important, and you have to want to do things in the way that an organization wants them done. You also have to do that for clients if you're an attorney. Like you will have to, if the client expects certain things, that the client is managing you. And so you have to even, in many cases, be managed by the client. You have to do things in the way they want. If you can't be managed, it's a huge problem. And it's something that's going to prevent you from succeeding. And the next thing is, and this is very, very important. So the law firm, again, is interviewing you, based on, whether or not you can do the job, and they're also interviewing you based, whether or not you're someone that is going to commit and be able to do the job long term. Very, very important. So, this attorney candidate also left a lot to be desired when they answer the third question. Are they someone that's going to come there and do the work on a long-term basis, meaning if we hire this person, are they going to stick around? Are they the type of person that is going to, will do the work for forever, basically? That this is what they're committed to, and they're going to do this. They're going to stick around in the law firm for a long time. They're going to do the work, and they're going to commit. And so, if you were a law firm, just think about it. Are you going to want to hire someone that you're going to be managing in a certain way, that's going to do the work in the way you want? And are they going to stick around? Because if you're not going to stick around, that's not good. Because people that leave law firms, that don't commit, that sends a bad message to other attorneys that are there. If the person is introduced to clients and so forth and working for the client, and the client depends on them, but then they leave, the client's not going to like that. So, is the person going to commit and do the job long term? If I interview someone and for a recruiter role and they've been at, three recruiting firms in 3 years, they're obviously probably going to come to my firm and leave quickly too. If a law firm's interviewing someone that's been at four firms in 6 years, they're not someone that's going to commit. It's very, very obvious from the resume. They're not going to be doing the job in the long term. So, when you see a candidate, any candidate that I have, if they've been at a bunch of places that in a short period of time, the law firm's going to figure out that you're not the type of person that's going to be there for a long term. Again, someone else at my door. Give me. Okay. So that's the next thing. So, anybody with a candidacy that's, looks like they're not going to be there for a long period of time is not someone that the law firm's going to want to hire. If someone, was presenting, looking like they're not manageable, they're probably not going to stay there long term. If anybody has a bunch of, short-term jobs and things on their resume, they're probably not going to stay in the job long term. So anybody that doesn't look like they're going to be managed, anybody that doesn't has a lot of moves and so forth on their resume, often are the people that don't look like they're going to practice in long term. So they're not going to get hired most of the time, and the law firm knows that. And give me one second. So those people, aren't going to stick around. If again, this person that I was talking about doesn't look like someone that's going to stick around. And why would you, if you were a law firm, why would you hire someone that doesn't look like they're going to stick around? It's not good. It's just a bad hire. It's someone that, you know, isn't going to be around for a long period of time, so they're probably going to leave. Think, if you're at a law firm and you're the type of person that isn't that, you probably aren't going to stick around, then you shouldn't be there, because people that don't stick around, they do all these things. Like, if they're going to be looking for a job, sometimes people, will look for a job when they're 6 months in. They're not going to be, when they're looking for a job, they're not going to have the same level of enthusiasm or management. So people just don't like that. And so people will often, hire people just because of their qualifications that can't be managed, but won't stick around in the long term. And this is a huge mistake. So law firms, will see someone that is bounced around. They'll like their resume, and you just know based on this person's resume that they're not gonna that they're not gonna stick around. And you should know that based on all these moves. I mean, I have another guy that I'm working for. He's in Texas, and he went to a top 5 law school. He's currently he's currently at a law firm, but he doesn't like the work. And he's been at, this is like his fourth law firm, and, in 6 years. He also took a break from the practice of law, was unemployed, and couldn't get another job in a large law firm. So now he's at a law firm that does a lot of insurance defense, and he wants to be a commercial litigator, but he's got this great record. And but these law firms are interviewing him, and that are top law firms, but they're interviewing him based on his qualifications, and it's just a huge mistake. So law firms will get blinded by that. They will think, oh, because of this person's previous background, it's so good, that we're going to hire them. But really, they're blinded by the qualifications of the attorney, and they're going to hire that person, even though, it's clear from them that they probably can't be managed. It's clear based on their resume that wherever they go, they're probably going to leave, and they shouldn't be hired because that person is going to be a bad hire. Now, why am I working with that person? I'm working with them for different reasons than that. because of they over anyway, but they're not trying to, I can't get them jobs in top law firms. I can get them jobs at different types of law firms, smaller law firms that have a very hard time attracting people and that sort of thing. So I'm working with him, but he's going to get a job at a firm that's not a top law firm, and then he's obviously probably going to try to move from that as soon as he can to try to get a job in a top law firm, and that's someone that can't be managed. And so anybody that hires that person and that can't be managed and is not going to stick around, it's just very, very expensive because when people aren't committed, they're going to probably lower the morale of everyone because that's not how they're just not committed, and when they leave they're probably going to leave based on having criticisms of management or criticism of the work, and law firms will often go out of business when they hire attorneys who aren't manageable. This is kind of a very funny example, but I'll give it anyway. It's not funny, but it's an interesting example. So law firms will often merge, or they will hire these, they'll start up an office, or they'll try to grow their firm. And so they will hire, often they'll attract partners and groups of partners to come work for them. So they will hire different people in different practice groups from firms, and they will hire all these attorneys. And so attorneys from different firms will come in, and they will have often left their existing firms because they weren't manageable. They didn't like the management. And so they'll come over as groups, and then different groups will come over, and those groups have left their existing law firms because they couldn't be manageable and there were issues with them. So they will come into the law firm. This is very funny, but it's true. You'll have these groups of partners that come in from all these different firms, and those groups of partners won't follow, they will resist the way the new firm's managing them. And they will often say, "Oh, I came over to this firm because of, not wanting to be managed in a certain way." So they will resist often the branch office. If it's a branch office, they will just resist all forms of management. And because they resist those forms of management, the law firm, these people, are all working in little silos. They won't, they're unhappy. And so all the partners and the law firm that merges and tries to grow by bringing in all these people from different firms that are unhappy, those law firms will experience all these sorts of problems, and they will often, sometimes if it's one office, they'll literally, all these people will leave, and the law firm will go out of business, or the law firm will, the law firm will, just have all these serious problems that will change the whole dynamic because even the partners are leaving, and that's not a good thing. I'm working with this one guy right now. This is again another very interesting example. There is a law firm in the Bay Area right now that the law firm lost all of its litigation attorneys. They lost like two different groups of them. It was like, I don't know, 10 litigation attorneys. So now the law firm has all this litigation work, but then it's the law firm's origination of the work, and they have nothing, no one to do the work. So I have one candidate. I mean, this is an incredible story. He's doing insurance defense, not commercial litigation. Insurance defense is much different. And I sent him to this firm, and they're interviewing him. They told him when he got in there, I mean, this is just crazy, that he would be the managing partner of this office of the law firm, the managing partner, and he's never, doesn't have any business, but they needed someone to be the managing partner so quickly because the way that the law firm was compensating people and everything, the law firm lost all these people. And so these are people probably that couldn't be managed, didn't like the compensation, that had other issues with the law firm. So now they're trying to attract anybody that they can to do the work because they lost all these people, and those are people that couldn't be managed, and it's very, very interesting. So sometimes law firms will do that. They'll get blinded by the qualifications, and they often make these mistakes, and people will have all these things that people that they hire, that the people just won't be the people that are going to commit, and if they hire those people just aren't going to be good. They're going to undercut the team, and they will, the people that they hire that are, people that are unhappy at their existing firms, people that maybe think that the work is, that the firm's brand is beneath them, so they're never going to stick around. The law firm is not, those people don't look like they're going to be manageable for the long term. This is again another interesting example. So what often happens is someone that's lost their job or they can't get a job will often go to work at a law firm that pays less. They'll interview with law firms that pay less, that don't have the type of brands that the attorneys work for, that doesn't pay as much. And so sometimes smaller law firms will hire those sorts of people, but the second that that person gets there, they will basically be interested in going to work somewhere else. So they will try when they can to move to a better firm. Oftentimes, in what happens in legal recessions is all these people will lose their job. So they'll lose their job because there's a recession in corporate law, there's a recession, in real estate law because interest rates are too high, or, something else, or they're in a market where maybe there aren't a lot of positions, so they will take jobs in smaller law firms but they often will not get jobs in smaller law firms because those smaller law firms know, even if they have the work, that as soon as things improve in the market, that person's going to leave. So they will literally, even though they have the work and someone looks very good, they will not hire that person because they know that that person's not going to stick around. That's just, a major issue. When I was clerking, I started sending out lots of letters to law firms all over the Los Angeles area, and I did this search where I did it within like 100 miles of Los Angeles. And so I picked up, when I did that, I sent my resume to law firms in Fresno and Bakersfield, and those are not nice places to work. People do not often want to live in Bakersfield or Fresno. So law firms, when they were, this one law firm member called me and he's like, Fresno is not a great place to live. Do you have any family there? Why are you trying to work here? And he said, well, if we were to hire you, you definitely would, get here and you want to leave because you don't have any family or any reason to stay here. Another type of candidate and I want you to understand this point right now because this is a very important point for looking for jobs. One of the largest sources of placements that we make. So again, keep in mind that BCG is working with, 1,000 plus people at one time trying to get a job. One of the largest sources of placements, and I would say that it's over 25%. One of the largest sources of placements that we make, and again, think about this, like we're sending people to all these law firms in their market. But we have a lot of people that will basically, they'll look at jobs in their market, but they'll also be looking for jobs in a place where they're from. So they will maybe be looking for jobs in New York, but they'll also be saying that I'm from Cleveland or Cincinnati. I want to move home because my family's there. I want to be there because that's, very important to me to be close to my family. And so law firms will take a look at that person and they'll say, wow, this person is moving here, their family's here, so they're probably, they're going to come here and they're going to settle down and they're not going to leave this market. And so every law firm, not every law firm, but a huge number of law firms may interview that person. I mean, they literally may get 10 plus interviews in Cleveland, even though it's a smaller market. And they will go in New York, they might get one or two interviews. I mean, literally in a huge market where there's 20, 30, 50 times more firms, but they won't get a lot of interviews in their existing market but they'll get interviews where they're relocating because the law firms look at their resume and they say they'll look at it and it'll be like, hey, this person is moving home, so they're going to commit. They're close to their family. They need a job, and so they're probably going to commit here and do well. So the law firms will interview them, be much more likely to hire them because they know when that person comes, they're gonna stick around and probably succeed. When I was leaving my clerkship, I was in Bay City, Michigan, which is very close to Detroit, and I was from Detroit, and so in Detroit at the time, there were 5 or 6 law firms that are top law firms like Miller Canfield, Dyke McGossett, Dickinson Wright, Honigman Miller, Plunkett Cooney, like a couple of those firms. I mean, those are the main firms, but I sent my resume to all those firms, and every single firm interviewed me. Every single firm. Like when I was leaving my clerkship, I did not get interviews with every single firm. I got interviews with every single firm. And then when I sent my resume to firms in Los Angeles, I got interviews with top firms, but I certainly didn't get interviews with every top law firm. I didn't get interviews with every top law firm because moving to a new market, they had no reason to believe that I would stick around there. So they did not interview me. And they didn't interview me because, why would you interview someone that's moving to this market? Because we don't know if they're going to stick around. Law candidates will often blanket their resume. Maybe they're from Texas, but they will apply to firms in Oklahoma and Arizona and all these things. And it's the same thing. Law firms will look at them and think, why, if they come here, like maybe they have family in Texas, like why would they stick around? Why would we hire someone that's not likely to work here in the long term? Law firms, candidates that are moving market. So I have another woman right now that's not getting as many interviews as she would like, but she's getting a lot of interviews. She's in Washington, D.C., and she is in a very kind of, a very well-defined practice area. I think it's like environmental land use, which is a small practice area, and she's relocating to another market, and in this market, one second, I'm sorry, she's relocating to that market, and she's relocating because her husband got his dream job there, and they went and they bought a house. And so I'm marketing her to all these firms, and basically in my materials, I'm saying she's going to Denver because her husband got his dream job. They've already bought a house. So there's, now she's working in Washington, D.C. Her husband's there and they really need to go there. And so most of the law firms with an environmental law practice are interviewing her. But had she not had that and she was just applying to those firms, just saying, oh, I'd like to live in Denver because I like the outdoors and things, she would not get a lot of interviews. So having a reason that you're going to stick around in that market for the long period of time are things that the law firm likes. Not having that, any connection to that market and so forth, and any reason to stay there are, not going to be there the long term. So lots of moves on your resume, but having a reason to move there are good. And if you're someone that's going into a law firm and you're going to work there until the economy approves, and they can tell that you've been at a lot of firms, and so they can tell that probably not going to stick around. You have no connection to the market. They can tell you're not going to stick around. But if you've been at your previous employer for a long period of time, or you have a reason to move to the market, you're going to stay there. And again, think about the example of the two people that I hired, one that had been there 18 years, the other been in their last firm for 8 years. All of those people ended up staying at BCG Attorney Search for 8 to 10 years for the first one, 18 to 20 years or whatever for the second one. Those are the type of people that go into an organization, they commit, they do well. So they, aren't people that look like they're going to stick around. So any candidate that I'm representing that looks like they're not going to stick around is not going to get interviews, and law firms aren't going to hire them. And it's just, or the most law firms aren't going to hire them. When they do, they make a mistake. I have people, that have gone to Stanford, they've gone to Chicago, they've gone to, top law firms, Harvard and things, but they just don't look like they're going to stick around. And law firms won't interview them, and they'll think, what's going on? And they'll think that I'm failing and there's something wrong with me. And what's wrong with them is they just don't look like they're going to commit. So people are like, my career's over. Law firms won't hire me anymore. And they just don't look like they're going to stick around. People will have moved from a law firm to another practice setting, like they've gone in-house, or they've gone to work in some sort of government position after having worked in a top law firm. And law firms will look at them and they'll say, if this person went in-house, like they obviously don't like working in a law firm, so why would we hire them? They're probably not going to stick around. So people can pick that up. And if you don't look like you're going to stick around, and you even don't feel like you're going to stick around, people will pick that up, and you're not going to get jobs, in these top law firms. And so that's going to hurt you. And the worst law firms, like I said, will hire partners, with partners with business just because of that, even though they don't look like they're sticking around. People that are associates that look like they're not going to stick around are bad hires. And people, will often become unmanageable at different points in time. They'll become unmanageable often when they're partners and because they have business and then will think they're just, entitled to special treatment and they will start once they start feeling like they have a certain amount of power and stuff, they'll become uncontrollable. Like there are partners that are in law firms and they're uncontrollable. Like even though they have work, they're just not doing things in the way that are make them controllable. Partners will do that when they're interviewing, or they'll demand, well, a lot of times they'll demand fixed compensation, meaning instead of getting compensated based on the amount of business they have, they will want basically to get a commitment from the law firm that the law firm is going to pay them a certain amount no matter what. And then because they're, that's important to them and they're not going to do things and manageable the way that the law firm wants them done. So law firms that go out of business, this is another very interesting point. So Dewey Ballantine, where I started my career, that law firm made two huge mistakes that made it go out of business. And the law firm had literally been around. It was one of the oldest law firms in the United States. It was a law firm that you probably even haven't heard of it, but because you're probably younger, but some people that aren't, was probably one of the top 5 to 10 law firms in New York City in terms of its prestige level. So it made two huge mistakes. The first thing it did was it merged with this law firm, LaBeouf Lamb, which wasn't as good of a firm. And the people there, that law firm just wasn't succeeding and it had had all these problems. And a lot of it was because the people weren't manageable. So it merged with a law firm of people that weren't necessarily manageable. And so that was not a good not a good merger. And so when that happened, they hired people that were difficult to manage. So that's one thing that hurt them. But this is the second thing that made the law firm go out of business. And this was really the big thing. So they hired all these lateral attorneys in with business because they thought that would increase the firm and make it better and would increase the amount of money they earned. So when they hired them, they gave them these huge guaranteed draws. So they paid people like 5 million a year and they hired a bunch of people like that, or 10 million a year. And then the financial crisis came in like 2008. Those people didn't have any work, but the law firm still had to pay them that amount. And even when it did hire those people, several years previously, those people did not bring in the amount of business that they told the law firm that they would bring. And they did that almost, immediately. And so they had these huge commitments of, tens of millions of dollars to all these partners. And then they were people that they hired that demanded this fixed compensation and they couldn't afford to pay them. They had all these lines of credit. And so the law firm ended up literally going out of business because it could no longer pay these people and had these lines of credit that couldn't be paid. And so it made the law firm, again, 100 years old or whatever it was, the most prestigious law firm in New York, go out of business because it hired people that wouldn't stick around and it was a problem. So, people that do that, that law firm was severely damaged. Partners that demand all of this special treatment will often create the law firm, create problems in the law firm will lose money. And there are people that will never stick around. There was one partner, it's again, another funny story. I had this woman that had been an associate in, I don't know, 3 law firms in 6 years, which doesn't look good. And so I was talking to her, I'm like, why do you consistently leave all these firms? This isn't good. And she's like, well, I've been working for one partner and, he is continually like leaving these firms. I'm like, why is he leaving? And he's like, well, he gets there and they say they're going to compensate him a certain way. And then he doesn't. And, I think it's because he's not bringing them out of business, he says, but he goes there and then he doesn't like the firm. And so he ends up moving. He may have personality conflicts, he may have compensation conflicts, but this guy just ends up moving. So very bad hire. But the law firms look at him and they say, oh, this person has a certain amount of business. We should be hiring them and it will help us make money. But obviously, if they hire that person and they move firms, a partner every 2 years, they're probably not the kind of people that are going to succeed there long term. And if you're not manageable, you do not belong in a law firm. You can do all sorts of different types of work. You can be an entrepreneur, you can work somewhere else, but if you're not manageable, you're going to be a problem. One guy, I remember I was interviewed and hired that sued me. He was I hired him to be a CFO of my company. He came into the interview and he, was telling me that like he knows how things should be done. I need someone to really mentor me and tell me these things. And I was like, oh, this is great. Someone that will help me. But he was not manageable. Like he was someone that wanted to do things the way he wanted them done. And that was someone that was not manageable. I should have picked that up. And then when he started work for me, he started initially coming to the office at a normal time, but then he started coming in at like 2 in the afternoon. He started not coming in and doing these weekly meetings with me. He refused to do them. He's just like, I won't do it. And that made him unmanageable as well. And then eventually I fired him for coming to the office late, and he refused to come in at the time. He'd be like, well, I know what needs to be managed, need to be done. I can come in at different times. It doesn't really matter. And so I fired him and another guy that sued me because he got just wouldn't do things in the way I wanted them done. So these are people a lot of times that, that sue employers that there's just all these problems with them because they don't do things that way. And so if you're not manageable, you really should be finding, another, sorts of job that, maybe not be working in a law firm. And there's nothing wrong, with not being manageable. You may just not belong in that type of environment. And if you're not manageable, you're not going to do the job long term. And this guy that I hired, I knew he wasn't manageable when I hired him. He wasn't manageable, and he was someone that sued me. Most people, almost everyone that has sued me, and I've been sued over 25 years by people, and almost every single one of them that has sued me are people that wouldn't do things the way I wanted them done. They weren't manageable. And this same thing happens in all organizations. People are suing organizations and stuff a lot of times. Sometimes there's reasons to sue them, but most of the time they're suing, because they're not manageable. And that's just, the way some people are. Most people, that are, very, very successful, people are not manageable. I mean, I don't think Elon Musk would be manageable. I mean, he came in and did this dog thing and left very quickly. He didn't want to do things in the way Donald Trump wanted them done. And now he's speaking out against Donald Trump. He's not someone that's doing things the way, supporting the way Donald Trump wants them done. So he's going out and he's doing all these press releases and things about, or doing all this stuff saying Donald Trump's wrong for this new tax bill. And he's creating all these problems and saying, I'm going to create another a political party. I'm going to, Donald Trump needs to be impeached, all these sorts of things. So that's not someone that's manageable. Donald Trump's first administration, when he hired all these people that he thought looked good on paper, those people turned on him and wouldn't do the way things he thought they should be done. Even his vice president resisted his management. And so he hired all these people and that basically undermined his first term and didn't make it as successful because he was hiring people that wouldn't do things the way the way that he wanted them done, which he needed to be effective as the president of the United States. So he made all these mistakes. And then he did the second term. He hired a lot of people that were manageable. And so he's doing better. But Elon Musk obviously was not a good hire. Elon Musk isn't manageable by the person that he looked up to, and he's not manageable. And Donald Trump wouldn't be manageable. Donald Trump, if you were to hire him, would not be someone that's manageable. So Donald Trump had Elon Musk help him because he was blinded by the fact that he was the richest man in the world, but not manageable. If you look at homeless people or people that aren't employable, many people, a homeless person, may have psychological problems and so forth that create issues for them, or schizophrenia. So there's, a lot of reasons to be empathetic to them, but a lot of them are people that just you can't manage them. They won't do things in the way that any hiring organization, I mean, whether it's Burger King or whatever they're trying to work, they couldn't work at Burger King because they wouldn't do things the way that Burger King wants them done. If you work in a fast food restaurant, you have to be very, very manageable by procedures and these sorts of things. And if you're not manageable. If you're a franchise of McDonald's and you decide, you don't need to have everything that they want on the menu, and you can take some things off and have some things you want, not manageable at McDonald's. And so McDonald's will cancel your franchise. If you're unsuccessful and in your career, and not doing well, you're probably not manageable a lot of times. And people that are underemployed, meaning attorneys that aren't getting jobs in the best law firms, are probably things on their resume that make them look manageable. So people that are manageable will do things and they'll stick around, because and they'll work in the job long term because they are manageable. So the people that are manageable will want to be part of a team, and they'll see their existence as being part of a team. And manageable attorneys will feel more comfortable around others, and they'll be more and they'll stick around, and they'll put their heads down, and they're not going to be they're not going to be they're interested in the success of their group. They know that for the law firm to succeed, everyone needs to do things in the way they want, and they will look at people that aren't manageable and not going to stick around, and they will avoid them. And they will stick around with people, they want to stick around. They're going to get strength by being part of a cohesive group, as opposed to what they can do individually. They're going to want what's best for the group. They're going to make sure that everyone is part of a team, and succeeding. They will like being part of a team. I have people, again, that have been at this company for 20, 25 years, and those people like being part of a team. They want the group to succeed. They will tell me when there are people that aren't doing things in the way the company wants, and we will and then those people will be expelled. I had one person last week that was not doing work in the way that the company wanted, responding to emails, and then we have recording software on the person's, everyone that works for us, on their computers, like, because we want to make sure that they're working the hours that they said they would, and all this sort of stuff. And so that we had a person that billed us for a lot of hours, so they worked 90 hours in a pay period, and then we looked at their a screen, and they were doing work that wasn't related to what the company needed. And so they obviously weren't going to be around, long term. And I will tell you that there are certain people, they may be genetically wired. I don't know what it is, but or they may have learned these lessons, but there are people that are just, will stick around long term, and, keep sacrificing for the groups. And there are people that just look like they're going to be there, and they succeed. Another story that I tell a lot, but it's just interesting. When people go to work a lot of times in smaller markets, like where there might be, just a few law firms, maybe they're from, some random geographic area that's not a big geographic area. They get out of law school and go to work for a firm, and then they stay there for, a huge length of time, meaning almost like their entire careers. And so you look at them like, 20 years they've been at a law firm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or I don't know, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or something, or not even Baton Rouge, a smaller market than that. But then they stick around, and so if you were to hire that person, they would look like they would stick around. When I clerked in a city, again, called Bay City, Michigan, which is a small market. There's only a few law firms there, and there's another area with a few law firms, Midland, Michigan. I was in a group of attorneys that had recently graduated from law school. There were like, 5 or 6 of us, because there weren't a lot of people that were new attorneys there, but they had like a little group where we would go out and drink and so forth. And I looked at the resumes of those people 20 years later. I just looked them up, and they were at the same law firms that they had been at when they graduated from law school. It's very interesting. Now they were managing partners and so forth. And I would say probably anybody I went to University of Virginia with, that joined a large law firm out of law school, probably had worked at that point, 5 or 6 of them. So they would have been, good hires in this market. But, they were the people that were in the smaller market were just more group oriented. And, they felt like, they needed to stay part of a group, and they got success from that, and they didn't want to betray the group, and they looked like that they would stick around. Anybody that goes into interviews and they look like they're going to be looking out for their own self-interest or doing what they want, are not going to get employed. And, they're going to be disappointed, even if they're part of a group, when someone leaves because they want that group to be cohesive. They don't like it. And, they may not be concerned about the cohesiveness of this group, and sticking around and being there a long term. And so, law firms, smart law firms will hire people that are like that they will stick around. And law firms that are hiring people that are putting their needs above others aren't going to succeed. And, law firms care more about teams and not individuals. And people with these very strong individual tendencies that don't want to be part of a group and that probably aren't going to stick around, aren't going to do well. That, professor that I told you about earlier in my career, he, hired me, but I mean, didn't tell me I wouldn't work well in a law firm because I didn't like to be part of groups, these study groups and things. I was too individualistic, and he knew that I probably wouldn't stick around. So that was, a very insightful thing, and he was absolutely right. So if you're working in a law firm, you need to be kind of concerned, about the group, and you need to look like someone that's going to stick around. And you may be wondering right now, does that mean I can't be an individual if I'm working in a law firm and concerned about, the type of work I'm getting and not concerned about the compensation or potential advancement? Of course, you need to be concerned about that. But those are important things. But if you don't look like someone that's going to stick around, that's a problem. And the needs of the team always need to, dominate any of your individual needs. And you need to be, someone that, regardless of the compensation issues with a law firm in the short term, are probably going to stick around because every law firm goes through ups and downs. They will have groups of partners leave, they will lose business and they will need to get more business. But the people that succeed there are probably, that the law firm wants to hire, people that are going to commit, and they're going to commit regardless of the current success and so forth of the law firm. They're just always going to commit. And so that's who you would hire. You would want to hire someone that's going to be there for the long term. Again, if you're hiring, I give these examples because a lot of attorneys, will they will, go someplace and they look like, they're going to commit for the long term. And that, again, the attorneys, the people that work for me for, 8 and 15 years were people that looked like they were going to commit to the last firm, or 8 to 18 years looked like they would commit. There are other things that law firms look for. And this, by the way, I want you to think about this as well. So there are people that they start their job at a law firm, they they succeed, they're doing okay for the first couple of years, and then they'll get married, they'll buy apartments, they will buy houses in whatever market they're in. And so law firms actually like that. Law firms like it when you get married. Law firms like it even more when you have kids. Law firms like it even more when you buy a house. And the reason they like that is because they know if you have kids and you're married and you buy a house, that you're going to have to commit to wherever you go because you need a job to pay your mortgage. You need a job to pay to pay for maybe your car payment. You need a job to support your kids. So you're someone that has no choice but to commit. So you're obviously probably going to do the job long term. So think, are you confident enough practicing law that you bought a house and you've gotten married and had kids? They like that. So they're more likely to hire someone that does those things than someone that doesn't. So just because that's the kind of person that's going to commit, they're going to the kind of person that's going to stay there for the long term. You know, it's also interesting if you played, Division I sport in college, you look like someone that can be part of a group. You can't be part of a group and stay there for the long term and be in a sport for the long term if you're not willing to be part of a group and commit. You can't do any of these things because that's what you need. So when I represent people that have athletic stuff on their resume, they look like they're going to do the job for the long term because they commit. There's another thing that's actually very important. So and this again is, a factor, that you may not even realize you're doing in your resume. So people on their resume, one example that's kind of funny is I had a woman she was in the, entertainment club or whatever when she was in college. When she was in college, she did an internship at some sort of entertainment company. When she was in law school, after college, she worked in an entertainment company. When she was in law school, she was a member of this entertainment society. And then she was, I don't know, entertainment attorneys, practice group organization in the city she was in. And she was applying to these law firms. She came to me, she's like, well, I'd like to do entertainment work, but if I can't get it, I'll take a corporate job. Well, how stupid would a law firm be for hiring someone like that? Because obviously, based on this person's resume,
they want to do entertainment law. They sure as hell don't want to be a corporate attorney. And so, I mean, she did get a couple interviews, but having this stuff on her resume was ridiculous because you obviously anybody would be able to commit that, that the soonest this woman gets an entertainment job, she's going to leave. Another example that I have a lot of times is there are attorneys that will have stuff on their resume. I had one guy that couldn't get a job. He was in New York. He'd lost his job at a law firm. He was unemployed. He wasn't getting any interviews, and he went to Columbia Law School and did very well there. Well, his description of the work that he did at his last law firm was just absolutely incredible. Had like 3 lines talking about how proud he was of all this pro bono work he did. And then he had 1 line at the end that talked about, he did some M&A work and so forth in the law firm he was in. So obviously, he wasn't getting interviews because he looked like he was interested in something else. Law firms that take a look at your resume and they see that your current job is doing one thing and your last job was doing another, and your job before that was doing another, you bounced around between practice areas and so forth, they won't hire you because you don't look like you're going to do the job for the long term. Law firms that take a look at your resume and they see that everything is consistent with the type of practice area you want to be in. So maybe you were an engineer prior to law school, maybe you majored in electrical engineering in college, maybe you went and got a master's degree in electrical engineering, and maybe you became a patent attorney and you've written all these patents and you talk about nothing but patents on your resume, and then you talk about all the patents you've written in an attachment. Law firms will know that you're going to be a patent attorney for the rest of your career. It's pretty obvious, especially if you've only been at one law firm for a length of time. So does your resume talk about your practice area? Does your practice area talk about all of your previous activities related to your practice area? Then they're going to hire you. They're not going to hire someone that doesn't look like they want to be in this practice area. They're going to commit to the practice area for the long term. You would not hire someone to work for you that looked like they were not going to be committed and do the job for a long term. So you hire a nanny, and your nanny has the fact that they did one job unrelated to a nanny, then they did another job unrelated to being a nanny, then they were a nanny, then they did another job that was unrelated to being a nanny, and maybe they did something else in their, before trying to get a job with you as a nanny, and so they bounced around between different types of jobs. And then you hired another person that you had another resume of someone that had been a nanny for 10 years and at their last employer. You would think, wow, that last employer probably liked them. They probably did a good job there. Everything about their resume says that they want to be a nanny. And so that would be the person that you would want to hire if you were hiring someone to work for you. You would be more motivated by hiring someone to work for you that had done something for a long period of time than someone that had done something for different types of things. So, will you do the job long term? Will you commit? This is important. Like, this is one of the, manageability is important, being committed, to looking like someone that can do the work and the way they want. But are you someone that looks like you're going to commit for the long term? And they can tell that. I mean, they can tell you that based on enthusiasm for your practice area in the resume. They can tell that based on your previous activities. They can tell that by the organizations you're interested in. So if you're trying to get a job in a law firm, you need to look like someone on your resume that wants to do that, that has a lot of experience in that practice area, that wants to do that work and is going to stick around. And again, this is one of the most important things. People make this mistake all the time. When you go in house after being in a law firm, it doesn't look like you're going to work in a law firm long term if you're committed, because you're going to leave the second you get another in-house job, probably. If you've gone to work in a law firm and you've been there a few years and then you've gone to work for the government, same thing. You look like an attorney that's not going to commit and be there the long term. So very important. People will ask, does this person look like they're going to stick around? And if you look like you're going to stick around, then you're the kind of person the law firm wants to hire. So, whether you're young or old, you will, if you give the impression that you're entitled, that you're not going to be manageable, and you're looking at what you want in terms of what the team and the law firm wants, you're someone that looks like they're going to stick around. If your resume talks about your practice area, good law firms are not concerned with with whatever your accomplishments are. They're more concerned with, are you going to put your head down and do what this employer wants? Are you going to do the work? Are you going to stick around? Are you going to be manageable? And do you want to do this type of work? And being an understanding that law firms are basing their decisions on looking like someone that can be managed. So do you go into law firms and do you ask them, I mean, this is a big question. So the one question that you can ask when you go into interviews that's going to increase your odds of getting the job by, multiple times. Like you can ask this one question and you will improve your odds of getting a position by multiple times, like 5 times. If you go into a law firm and you ask your interviewers, like, what could I do to, really be the top associate in this law firm when I interview, or what is it your partnership would need for me to really make things work? Like if you ask people that, like, what do you need from me? Like, what can I do to make your job easier? What would, really satisfy you when I start here? If you ask those questions, the first question would be like, what would it look like 90 days in? Like what would, if I came in 90 days, what would make me succeed? What would make me, do really well? What are the characteristics of those sorts of people? If you ask that question, it will increase your odds by multiple times. Like even if you don't have like the best personality and you think you don't interview well and stuff. If you ask that question, you will do very, very well in interviews. Most people don't. So when they're asked a question, like, do you have any questions? Maybe they'll ask about remote work, or maybe they'll ask about, time off, or they'll ask about vacation policies. They'll ask about health insurance and things. Those are bad questions. You need to ask the law firm, like, what is it you need, or will make me successful? How can I make your job easier? All those sorts of things. If you don't think like you can ask those questions, and you don't think like, you're going to ask the person, like, what do you need from me? Like, why are you hiring someone like me? That's what the law firm wants. That's what you would want. Like, what would make me successful? What would make me do very well here? What would help you, with, what would help you? What would make things good for you? That's what you need to ask. And you need to look like you're manageable. You need to look like, you're going to be able to do the work for a long period of time. You need to look like you want the job. You need to look like you're going to stick around. I hope the presentation has been very helpful to you. I'm sorry this started late. It's crazy, but I want you to understand these questions, because these are the questions you need to ask yourself. If you don't answer these questions in your interviews and you don't look like you can answer these questions, you're not going to get jobs. If your resume doesn't show that you like the work, that this is the type of work you want to do, you're not going to get, hired. All these things are going to create issues for you, or are going to make it look like you're not going to stick around. I'll just tell you one other example that's very interesting to me, because I've seen this a lot. So not a lot, but I've seen it several times. I see it probably like once a year or something, not or twice a year, not very often. But there are people that, for example, they went to college and maybe they majored in nursing or some type of thing related to healthcare. And then they got out of college and they did some job related to healthcare. Maybe they were nurses, maybe they were something, I don't know what it would be, but something related to healthcare. And then they went to law school and they were part of this entertainment law society, entertainment and healthcare law society. And they took an internship, maybe a summer job with an healthcare law firm, and then they maybe they got an LLM in healthcare law. Like that, there may be like, you know, 15 jobs in the country for someone like them, and they will apply to them in different states and things where they don't have connections, and they will get lots of interviews and jobs just because people think this person's going to commit to being a healthcare attorney. This is what everything about their resume says. They got an LLM in healthcare law. They obviously want to do healthcare law, so this is a good hire for us. So you have people like that. And then there was another thing that I had that was very interesting. There's in Florida, there is a law school. I don't remember what it was, but it's one of the few in the country that has a job. I mean, LLM in education law, which is a very niche practice area. And people were coming out of this program for several years, and were a lot of them, because there's just no jobs. A lot of jobs in education law that are advertised and stuff weren't getting a position. So they were coming out of this program. I just want you to think about, like, this is an incredibly interesting example. They weren't getting positions because they weren't they weren't marketing themselves correctly and they didn't know what to do with this education law. So I had this business, it was called Legal Authority, and you would come to Legal Authority and you would talk to someone, and we'd have called an employment advocate, and then that person would locate, using our research, all of the law firms that did education law, for example, and they might help them do a search in markets or whatever, or 20 markets, and send out 3,000 letters and stuff to the law firm, to law firms. And I mean, it's an incredibly interesting example. And all of those people, like the first person I worked with got like, 7 jobs, and then told people. And then all of a sudden, every single person that graduated from this LLM program each year would use Legal Authority and would get jobs because they were applying with this education law background. A lot of times they were teachers and things before they went to law school. Nobody was getting jobs. But then when they started having me market them to every firm I could find with an education law practice group, were all getting jobs, and thought that this was just an incredible company, and Harrison was incredible because he was getting all these people jobs. And I do the same thing with candidates that come to BCG. If they have a very good background that looks like they're committed to their practice area, I help them modify their resumes to look like they're committed to the practice area. Then those people end up getting positions. Just again, very, very interesting. They may have been unemployed for a year, but they have the manageability, they have all these things, and they have a commitment to their practice area. Maybe they're in a small market, not applying to enough jobs, but they get jobs when they allow me to mass market them. Very, very effective. So I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I will answer questions. This is a live webinar, so I will answer as many questions as you have, and I will stick around. I do have to catch a flight in a little bit, and I'm getting in a hotel, but I can stick around for probably as long as you have questions. You can ask questions about anything related to this webinar and things that have come up. Questions you have about how to fix different things in your background. You can ask questions about anything related to your career or anything, and I will answer them. I've been doing this 25 years, so I love answering questions. Every time people ask questions, I often will be able to articulate something that no one's ever asked, or I can help you make major changes in your career that you may not have thought about, and address them and help you. So again, I'll take a quick break. When I come back, I will answer as many questions as everyone has. And again, I'll just be gone for like a minute or two, and then I'll come back. I have to actually get some coffee, but I'll be back in just a few minutes, and then I will take as many questions. And again, ask anything that you can think of that's helpful. Thank you. Back. Okay, so we'll get started here. Give me 1 second. And again, questions, very, very important part of the webinar. So let me just pull this up real quick. And questions. Oh, all right, just give me 1 second. I'm pulling up document here for questions. Here. Okay, questions. Okay, there's not a ton of questions, so any questions you have, I will question. I have a hard time copying this. Give me copy. Oh, that's not working. Okay, I'm gonna actually copy. Hold on 1 second. Well, it doesn't matter, I guess. Good. Okay, so the first question is, I'll give me 1 second. A little bit difficult doing these in a hotel room, but got this. Okay, so the first question is, I've been practicing in a mid-sized firm for 6 years, and while I don't dislike the work itself, I constantly feel drained by the environment and the pressure to bill aggressively. After listening to your framework, I'm starting to question whether I'm truly suited for a law firm life or just burned out. How can you distinguish between temporary burnout and a fundamental mismatch between the law firm model before I make a big career decision? Okay, so there's a couple things that I would say to you. So, with with the work you do, and this is important, the work you do, give me 1 second. You should feel energized by the work. And this is, important to think about. So are you energized? Meaning, Does this give you a lift in your mood? Do you feel better? Do you actually feel like this is something that's fun? Is it fun doing the work? Now, when you're a junior associate, a lot of times, and you said you've been practicing for 6 years, when you're a junior associate, a lot of times you're not going to have a lot of responsibility. You're going to be given work that, is kind of you're going to be given work that so here, you're going to be given work that may not be that exciting, but at the same time you're going to be feeling like this is something that the client really needs. This is I'm glad to be learning this and so forth. And then as you get more senior, like you have 6 years, you're going to be given more and more responsibility. And as you're given more responsibility, you're going to actually feel energized by the fact that someone's giving you more responsibility, that the law firm the law firm, you're part of a group that's solving problems, and you're going to be excited. So when I do this kind of work, like obviously I've been talking for almost 3 hours about it. I'm obviously energized about it. I don't have a lack of enthusiasm. So do you have enthusiasm for the work you're doing? And can you see yourself as you get more and more work and as you get a better resume for doing this work? Do you see yourself as, are you excited about having more and more responsibility? And if you're in that position, and you're doing work that's not giving you a lot of excitement, and you don't see having more excitement in the future as you get better at this, and you don't get excited about good reviews, then you're probably may not be suited to it. Now, you may not be suited to it. I mean, you may be suited to it in just the wrong environment. So I'll talk to people like from Skadden that have been working like 3,300 hours for 3 or 4 years, and that obviously can lead to massive burnout and put you in a position where you actually don't like the work, and where the work is so so difficult just because you're not it's just too much for you. Like, you just who needs to work 3,300 hours? I mean, that means you're not getting enough sleep, and that means that you can't have relationships that are productive with significant others or even friends outside of work, and that's going to really drain you and create issues. So that's not to say that every environment is bad, you're just you might just be in the wrong environment. That can be very, very harmful to you. And so working in that, I had another woman. I'm not going to say what firm she is because I don't want to trash the firm, but she was working at a law firm, where a major law firm, like, the level of Skadden too. And she was working at a law firm where when she started working, they very quickly picked up that she was an incredibly good writer that was able to write briefs and things for the law firm's clients, that were winning cases and that were really making the law firm look good to the client. And so she was the best litigator in this office of hundreds of attorneys in this major law firm. Once she started working for him, wanted him to work on all her things, and he would give her like all his work. And so she was in this position again where she was working, 3,000 plus hours. And she'd been working one day, she'd been doing this for, months and months and months without a break. And then one day she was at work, and one of the blood vessels in her eye exploded. Like, just this blood vessel just exploded, and she had blood and everything in her eye. And she went to the emergency room, and there was something that was due. And so the law firm partner, they were calling her emergency contacts. Like, no one knew that she left because she just like rushed out. And the law firm partner ended up like calling her parents at home. They were like and saying that if she didn't get into work, she was going to lose her job because there was this big thing that was due. And she quit. She quit the law firm, and she went to work, literally took time off, and then got a job with this online news magazine I have. I don't know if you're familiar with JD Journal. It's sort of like above the law. And she went to work at this magazine for us and was making $25 an hour. And I didn't realize who she was until she'd been working for this magazine for like a year, making $25 an hour. And when I found her, I'm like, you don't need to quit the practice of law. You just need to find another firm that will hire you where you don't have to work these type of hours. And so I got her a job, actually, at a very good law firm in California, not a major law firm, a smaller law firm, where she was making just as much money as she was making at Skadden, but didn't have to work these incredible hours. And so she got back into something. Like, she really liked writing. That's why she was working for this JD Journal company. She really liked writing, and got someplace where she was really good. So this person was someone that should be practicing law. she just got into, the wrong environment. So I'm in the right environment. So if you're working at if you're working someplace that's burning you out, that doesn't mean you're not suited to the practice of law if you like the work. But if you don't like the work, it doesn't make you feel energized, then and not giving you a lift, even if you were to work less hours, then you might be in the wrong profession. So you have to think about, does this does this give does this enhance my life force? Does this enhance how I feel about myself? Do I feel like the more I learn and the more I do this, the more responsibility I get? Does this excite me? And if it's not the case, then you're in trouble. I mean, you shouldn't probably be practicing law. I know sometimes another thing that happens to people is they may be in the wrong practice area. And so you may be in the wrong practice area that doesn't excite you. So you may be hired by a firm when you're out of law school that does corporate work, and you're more of a writer and you like drama and things, and so you're in the wrong practice area, and that's not exciting to you. I mean, it may be exciting working for clients and things and giving them good work, but that's not exciting to you. And so you're in the wrong practice area, and that can be, a bad choice for you. I have another candidate right now. He's a professor of trust and estates law. He has got his own practice right now. So he's a professor at a top 25 law school, like adjunct, where he's been for years teaching trust and estates law. His whole resume has his past two jobs before having his own practice were in trust and estates law. And he got this interview in a smaller market than he's currently working with, doing litigation. And his this law firm said, "Oh, well, we have also some trust and estates litigation that you can do. It can take up a large proportion of your practice, but we really need a litigator and someone to do litigation." So he got a job offer. The job offer pays for doing litigation just as much as he's making right now as a trust and estates attorney. And so this law firm's interviewing him to do this type of work. Now, he may and hired him. So they interviewed him. Literally, the partner with this work, was in trial and all week and didn't have time to interview him, doing litigation. So the law firm interviewed him on Saturday. They really liked him. They did a Zoom on a Saturday, so they called him back. The guy said, "Can you come to the office and interview with me on a Sunday?" So he came in and interviewed with the firm on a Sunday, and then the guy made him this offer to work there as a litigator. And so the guy's going to take this job, but everything on his background, says that maybe he should be doing trust and estates transactional work because that's what excites him. So he's probably not going to stay there very long. He may not like the work. He may actually prefer litigation. I don't know. But he took a job that's not going to probably energize him because his natural energy and the natural things that he does really, really excite him. And he's someone that should be doing the type of work. I know another woman, this is just an example. She was in law school, and she's right now one of the most successful immigration attorneys in the country. She's working with people, from the Ukraine. She's getting them citizenship in Mexico. She's working with people all over the world, helping them with very serious and important kind of related work in the United States, like getting into the United States. And she knows people that are in the administration. She can help. She knows senators and things, and she's done all this. And she went into trust and estates law. She worked for a trust and estates attorney. Not trust estates, I'm sorry, it's all immigration. She worked for an immigration attorney when she was in law school, her first and second year of law school. And she got there and she loved the work. Like, she really liked it. But she believed that this woman that she was working with wasn't doing as well as she could. She knew that the woman could be doing other types of work and didn't think that the woman had a good practice. She just instinctively believed that she could be very, very good at this type of job. And so she decided when she got out of law school to start her own practice because she loved the work so much and she believed it could be done better. And because of that, she decided, that she was going to start her own practice and became unbelievably successful. So she liked the work that she did. So that's an important point. One other example I have is I was in law school and I took this tax class. It was the craziest thing. Like, I was struggling I mean, I had to work hard to get B's at the University of Virginia. Back then they had a 50% of the class was that got, if you got a B average, you were literally in the top half because the grading was very hard. And they had a big curve. And if you were in a, class with like 30 people, maybe one or two people or three people got A's and A minuses. So I was in this, took a tax class. It was the craziest thing. Like I was struggling with property law and I struggled with contracts and I struggled with all these things and I had to study a lot to understand things. But I took this tax class. Again, the craziest thing, like I just, when the professor was talking about things, like he would start talking about something and I would understand just almost like instinctively, like where he would be 5 minutes from now. And I just was completely tuned in. I loved it. I don't know why. It was just something that was instinctively that I liked, and it was very motivating to me. And had I done that, I would have probably loved it. Even I probably wouldn't have stuck around practicing law, but I would have loved it because it gave me energy, and I was just incredibly excited. I walk out of a class, I was like, "This is amazing! Like, it's so fucking cool." And then I took other tax classes and got taxes and got A's in them too. I never got a job as a tax attorney, even though when I was a summer associate, I told them I wanted to do it. I never would have got a job as a tax attorney because I did a federal clerkship. I never would have got a job as a tax attorney because most of the people that do it go get LLMs. And then a lot of them have worked in accounting firms prior to law school. Never would have got a job as a tax attorney, but I just instinctively understood it. I loved it. I don't know why. I mean, it was like no class I'd ever taken. It was just, I just completely loved it and understood it. I don't know why. Again, it's just completely, but it was something that just whatever, for whatever reason, clicked with my brain. So are you in a practice area like that? Because, everybody that goes to law school may be good at something. Like you may be motivated by, like I said, educational law. You may be motivated by, patent work. You may be motivated by entertainment law. So whatever you're doing, that work makes you feel, it should be energizing to you. And if you are, you're in the right practice area. And many times, if you love something like that, I mean, I could have been maybe one of the best tax attorneys in the country because I just was at this top, 10 law school or whatever it is, and, was very, very good at this. And, so are you doing something you're very, very good at? Are you doing something that's very, very motivating to you, like the immigration attorney? Are you doing something that, you've always wanted to do, like healthcare law? Everything in your resume is about healthcare. Are you doing something like education law where you've been a teacher prior to law school and you really like this and you're getting an LLM? So do you really like what you're doing? And if you like what you're doing, you're probably suited to that practice area. And if you like what you're doing, you may be suited to a law firm. Some people, by the way, you don't have to be suited to a law firm. You can be suited to working in house. You can be suited to working for the government. You can be suited to working in public interest, but you should be suited to whatever you're doing. You need to be suited to it because if you're not suited to it, you're probably not going to do as well as you could. So were I a tax attorney, I would have spent, I would have loved reading tax cases at home. That would have excited me. Like instead of reading a book, I would have loved to read tax cases. Instead of I would have gone to work and been very excited each day about getting good results to clients. I would be very excited about talking to tax law with partners I was working with. It would just really freaking get me fired up. I don't know why, but that just did it for me. If it was litigation, not as much. If it was, corporate law, not at all. Like, no, it was crap. Real estate, bullshit. Like, no, not interested in it. But, at all. So does that work excite you? And if it excites you, you can do it in other practice settings. I could work for an accounting firm. You do it all these different places, but you have to be excited about the work you're doing. It's very important, and it needs to motivate you, and it needs to give you life force. Meaning your life, your life moves your soul to some extent. If you find that, you're completely probably absolutely in the right practice area. And if a law firm you're doing in a law firm, you're probably in the right practice environment. Now, I want to make just a quick chart, quick introduction to law firms. Law firms will do work at a high level because law firms have paying clients. So the work needs to be of very good quality. Law firms, just 1 second again. I need 1 more hour. Yeah. But law firms do work at a high level. Law firms are, a place where, you should be working if the work excites you. So, and if you want to do work at a high level, and if you want to work for multiple clients and you want to work on that type of management. But if you're not, then that's not a place where you maybe a law firm environment with the hours and stuff is not someplace you belong. Sometimes people become law professors because they like the practice setting so much. I mean, they like the practice area so much, but you need to be, excited by that. Okay, the next question is, during the webinar, you talked about certain attorneys who are not marketable to law firms, no matter their credentials. I'd like to better understand what those red flags are from a recruiter's perspective. What should I look out for in my own behavior and a resume that might signal to a law firm or someone like you that I'm not an ideal candidate for the environment? Okay, so if you're not an ideal candidate for a law firm, just real quick, not an ideal candidate. If you're not an ideal candidate for a law firm, you probably the practice setting that you're in, now or in law school practice setting, will show that. So, what practice settings have you chosen? If you get a job in a law firm as a summer associate or even as a clerk or something while you're in while you're in law school, anybody can get a job in a law firm. That can be a low paying law firm. It can be a job that doesn't pay. But whatever you do, if you're not getting a job in a law firm, it shows the law firm when you're in law school that you're not committed to that practice setting, or you don't want to be in that practice setting, or are you not working in that practice setting right now? The other thing is your practice area. This is the big thing that I look at. So if I see someone in a law firm, I will look at their practice area. So is there consistency in that practice area? So the consistency means I want to see like someone that's currently doing one thing. I want to see someone that was doing one thing prior to law school. So that means that they were, in that practice setting prior to being in law school or in law school. So they're doing one practice area. Why do I like one practice area? Because law firms hire specialists. They do not hire generalists. And so someone that's not doing that practice setting doesn't have consistency. Someone that's moving a lot, too much, too many moves over in a short period of time, that shows probably that they're not manageable or they're not doing good work and they're getting let go. So a short period of time, and it could be, three law firms in, 5 years or whatever it is. Not staying someplace a long time. Or if they are moving a lot, it's actually sometimes okay if they are moving to a better and better firms. And if they're moving to better and better firms, that means probably that they want to work at a firm that's doing better in that practice area, or that's giving them better responsibility. So you may be starting out working for small clients and you move to a firm where you're working for a little bit bigger clients, and then you work to another firm where you're working for even better clients. So that shows that you're moving up. And so if you're moving up, then you're obviously doing something right in your interviews, and you're obviously motivated to work there. And that's something that is very attractive to the law firms. So practice setting, meaning you're consistently trying to work in law firms, you're consistently working in law firms, you have consistency in your practice area, meaning you're not doing a lot of different things, you're not changing practice areas, you're working doing one thing. Because if you were a law firm client, you would want someone that's an expert in that practice area that's doing nothing but that practice area. If you were hiring a brain surgeon, you would want someone that's been a brain surgeon for a long time, or they did residencies in brain surgery, they wrote papers, they were on committees, they were, did nothing but brain surgery. They didn't do orthopedic surgery and work on kidneys and things. They only did that practice area, that specialty. You would want that. And if you were any type of employer, if someone was sticking around for a long period of time, if someone's sticking around for a long period of time, that shows that they're doing good work. That shows that they're willing to follow instructions, all those sorts of things, and they're willing to do things the way the law firm wants. So the practice setting, the practice area, and a lack of movement, and then also, enthusiasm. So if you're talking to the person and they're enthusiastic, then that they really want to work in another law firm, they like law firms, they're enthusiastic, that's something that's also makes them look good. And then what else makes them look good? It makes them look good if they're on, doing papers and they're writing, articles. They're on, bar associations related to the practice area. They're writing down with enthusiasm, on the resume, all the things that are related to their practice area. They're describing their practice, the work that they've done, describing the work that they've done in a lot of detail because they like it. And they're excited about, all these different things that they've done, related to it. So their resume, has like a long paragraph about, what they're doing. And then they're just very excited about it. And, maybe they even, list transactions, list, important work, and maybe a supplemental page about, the transactions or the litigation that they've done. They're just very excited about it. Like these are the people that are the best hires, and these are people that when I interview get jobs. Just people that do that, that, and I want them to get jobs. And so those are the type of people that end up getting positions. Okay, so the next question is, I have two offers, one from a major firm where I'd be expected to work around the clock, and another from a smaller firm with more work-life balance, but less prestige. I'm torn because I know the large law firm looks better on my resume, but I'm also worried I'll burn out. How do I weigh the short-term resume values against long-term personal fit when deciding which offer to accept? So I don't know how long you're out of law school, but you're asking what law firm is best for me. So I will just say to you, law firm is best for me. And and by the way, the person above just talked about the fact that, they didn't go to a good law school, they didn't do this. It doesn't matter. You can always get a job doing personal injury or immigration or family law or something, and and make a lot of money. You can make more money as a family law attorney than working in a major law firm. If you start your own practice, you can do the same thing with personal injury. I mean, I've seen people not be able to get jobs when they get out of law school for like a year or more. Then they get a personal injury job and they learn it. And I know two people actually that own jets. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, sorry to use that kind of language, but that, didn't go to a good law school, didn't do well there, became personal injury attorneys and just became unbelievably successful. So it doesn't matter what law school you went to. If you have enthusiasm for your practice area, you're going to do well. So I'm sorry, the question is, what law firm is best for me when when I have a job at a major law firm and a job at another law firm where I'm going to burn out. So your first 5 years of practice, or even your first 6 or 7, your job is to get training. So your job, you're getting paid actually to get training. If you wanted to be a doctor and you're an intern and you do your residency in a hospital, you're going to work 24-hour shifts or stuff, and because you're going to get all this training that's going to make you a better doctor in the long term, you're going to get just thrown into working in a hospital long hours and things, and they're going to make you work long hours, but you're going to learn how to be a very good doctor after not a lot of sleep and so forth. So what is a law firm is best for you? The law firm that gives you the best training, where you get to work on the largest clients, are best for you earlier in your career. It doesn't matter that you're working a lot of hours. You take that work is very good training for your practice area. You become a better attorney working at better firms because better firms require you to go in more detail. Better firms require better work because you're working for general counsels that worked in large law firms probably and are reviewing your work. Better law firms surround you with people that are smarter, that are more dedicated, the partners to the practice area, that are doing the work at the very highest level. So the best law firm that's best for you early in your career is a law firm that's going to give you the best training. And you should not worry about having to work hard your first 5 or 6 years, because you're going to become a much better attorney working at a better firm. Now, if you don't have the psychological makeup to work long hours, you can't handle it, you don't think you're going to be happy, it's just not going to do it for you, then maybe working in a smaller law firm. But if you work in larger law firms, you're going to have more opportunities later. Whether it is to work in a smaller law firm, you're going to get more of those opportunities, or whether it's in the smaller law firm will be better, or you're going to get more opportunities if you want to go in-house, whatever the heck you want to do. So the best law firm for you is often the best law firm earlier in your career. You should try to work in the largest law firm you can, because it's going to make you a better attorney. You're going to develop skills that are going to make you a very good attorney throughout your career. I had a guy come to work for me. Had been one of the top 3 students in the University of Texas Law School. And when he got out of law school, he decided to start his own practice. And I took a look. When he came to work for me, first of all, he wasn't manageable. He didn't want to be in the office. He had all these issues. But second of all, when he started turning in work, there were typos. He was making errors. He wasn't doing work at a really high level and writing all the type of detail and things that he needed, even though he was very smart. And he came to work for me, and I started you know, just tacking, because I was trained in a large law firm. The quality of work that he did, it was horrible. And he'd never gotten training. He trained himself in litigation and had done very low level litigation, meaning for individuals and things, and never learned how to become a good attorney. And he actually came, and after 4 or 5 weeks of having his work ripped up, he couldn't handle it and quit. And because he never got the training. So the better training you get, the better off you're going to do in your career in the long term. Okay, so let me just give me one more question here. this question is, okay, during interviews, the law firm made it clear that they value team players and cultural fit. Of course they do. So I'm hesitant to negotiate too aggressively, but I also feel that the offer doesn't reflect my experience and current market trends. How do I strike the right balance between advocating for myself and not coming across as someone who might be overly focused on? So again, your first 5 years of working in a law firm, already get training. That's it. So you shouldn't think about anything else but getting training your first 5 to 6 years. The better training you get, the more you learn to work with groups and things, the better attorney you're going to be in the long term. So, are you working at a place where you're going to get to practice at a high level? Are you working at a place where you're going to get training in one practice area? Are you going to work at a place where you're going to take lessons you can take with you throughout your career? So, when you learn how to do very good work, if you're 27 years old, you're going to be practicing law probably for at least another 50 years. So why wouldn't you get that type of training? Like taking to mind the attorney that I brought up from University of Texas Law School, never got that training. He's going to be an average lowbrow attorney if he wants to do commercial litigation or work for big clients the rest of his career. And that's what he did. He started a personal injury attorney firm where you need to be a decent attorney with negotiating, but you represent someone that's in an auto accident where someone else is at fault, you're always going to get paid. It's just causation. It's not very complicated. So he never learned how to become an attorney working for large law firms. The attorney I brought up earlier that went to University of Chicago Law School and was one of the top students in his class, got fired because he couldn't be manageable. He had to start a criminal law firm representing people doing, getting drunk driving tickets. I mean, you have to, what law firm's best for yourself. And so even if the compensation's not that great, if you're, going to get that training, you should try to work there because that training is going to stick with you throughout your career. You're going to be a better attorney. If you quit working in, from a law firm at the age of 30 and you never got that training, you're never going to be an expert and you're always going to never be someone that can do large law work for large clients and take that training because even if you're working for a smaller law firm after getting very good training, you're going to be a better attorney there. And the attorneys there are going to respect your work. You're not going to make mistakes. You're not going to have developed habits that are not going to be strong. So the best law firm for you is the one that gives you the best training earlier in your career. Now, if you're later in your career and you want to get and you expect to make a certain amount of money and you don't want to be completely undercompensated, then that may be something that you shouldn't, that you can negotiate for better compensation. But negotiating for better compensation can really mess you up. Like I had a woman that did customs law in New York City. She got a job. There are not a lot of law firms that do customs law. She got a job with one of the best law firms doing customs law. She was making $100,000 a year at another law firm doing customs law. She got a job with a law firm that paid. I got her a job at a law firm that was going to pay her 170,000, which is almost doubling her compensation doing customs law. But she thought she was entitled to $200,000 in compensation because she knew that there were some people in that law firm that were making 200,000 and she felt that she had 3 years of experience and she should be making 200,000. But the training that she got in customs law was really only half of her experience at her existing firm. And so she really didn't have as much experience as the other people there. She got an offer not paying as much. She turned it down. She thought it was an insult. And this was like 7 months ago. And she hasn't been able to get a job paying that amount. And she's still doing different types of customs law because she negotiated for compensation and she thought that she should be paid that much. It was insulted by that compensation. And that law firm would have been best for her. But she tried to negotiate too hard and demanded 200,000. They didn't hire her. Now she's unemployed. Not unemployed, but underemployed. So bad mistake. Okay, I've always been told that next question is, I've always been told that staying in a law firm for a few years is essential to show loyalty and commitment. But what if I know 6 months in that it's the wrong fit, does leave an early damage on long-term career prospects and staying in a bad environment. So some law firms can be a bad cultural fit for you. They may be a bad cultural fit. Certain attorneys are certain ways. Inside of law firm, there's always going to be a culture. The culture could be an all male culture where all the males are very, connected, where they all go out and drink together, or they're friends on the weekends and things. They may be all from, sometimes people are from, the South and they may all be, a certain way and you're from New York City and then so sometimes, or you're just with a law firm that is very Republican in nature, you're a law firm that's very Democratic in nature, or you're in a law firm where being part of a group is more valued than the quality of work you do. Sometimes people that are minority, whether or not you're an African American or you're gay or you're some sort of thing that can be difficult to integrate with the group. You should probably be with a law firm that supports people like you. If you're African American, you should be in a law firm where you feel accepted and where you can be part of the group. And so, or you're in a law firm where the people are a certain way, you don't like them. So yeah, you should probably be in a different law firm. But if you can find that law firm and you've been there for 6 months and you feel like the next law firm you go to is going to be a perfect cultural fit, then and when I was interviewing with law firms in Los Angeles, like when I came out, I knew the law firms that would be, I just instinctively connected with the people there and not other places. And I remember not getting one offer, and they said, it was with a law firm a very prestigious law firm that had a small branch office in Los Angeles. And I interviewed with the people, and literally out of the 10 law firm people there, probably 5 or 6 were just like very openly gay, like just very. And I really wanted to work there, but I didn't like mesh with the people in that way. And it wasn't just because they didn't like the kind of person that I was. And so when they called me up and they told me I didn't get an offer, they were like, it would be better for you not to work in this environment than someone else. And so they would probably hire someone that was more attuned to that environment and not coming to work, not having worked for a Republican judge and had stuff related to that on my resume. It just wasn't a fit for them. And so, and because I came across as someone like that, I was conservative and dressing conservatively, and they were, in one case, one of the guys was wearing leather pants, and it's just different. And so I wasn't fitted to it. So yeah, you should move and be if that law firm environment, you can move after 6 months. But if you go to a law firm that you're probably going to have a harder time getting a job after 6 months. I mean, law firms want to see at least a couple of years, and you're going to have a better chance of getting a better job. But if you move after 6 months to a law firm that is a good cultural fit, and you believe that you're going to stay there, then that's good. When I was interviewing with law firms when I was a second and third year attorney, the law firms I ended up getting jobs with were firms that had a lot of people from Southern schools because I went to Virginia, and I would interview with people for that, and they would assume I was part of the same culture. So I would get jobs with them as opposed to others, and those were better fits. Okay, I'd always been told that saying, okay, I got that question. Okay. The next question is, and this is a good question. I'm a longtime reader and listener, first time participant, because I have an interview coming up. My last firm turned down, and I have an interview coming up after my last firm turned out to be an improper fit, and I wanted to ask the following. Having encountered different personalities, a personal, a paralegal who enjoyed spreading office gossip internally, office manager who behaves in deliberately distracted manners, such as intentionally stomping louder outside my office rapidly. Yeah, people do that. And others who were more focused on what people ate than working. I've been left with a bad impression. I refrained from engaging in office scuttlebutt. That's good. Or verbally criticizing management, which is very good. If you criticize management, people are going to spread that. Secretaries will spread that. Other attorneys may spread that, and people will learn about that. I often put in very long hours and late nights, did all I could to be manageable and teachable, and at times generally enjoyed the detailed work. Are these distracting rates and occasionally vindictive environment situations that's common to most law firms? No. So different law firms will have different cultures, and you will not be comfortable there. I know a woman that took a job at a big New York law firm thinking it was a good fit, and that she got there and everybody was closing their office and doing their own thing and not socializing and not leaving their office. And that was a bad culture fit. She didn't like the quiet. She wanted an active office environment. So, your ability to be comfortable in that office environment is going to make a big difference for you. Not interview, but I go out and meet with law firms that are seeking people and need recruiters and things to help them, and they want to meet with me. And some of the firms I go into, like they're just like scary to me. Like everybody is like kind of cold and impersonal, like in the reception desk. And then I see people moving between, and if I see people talking in the firm, they're talking very softly, and then the law firm is like quiet. You can hear like a pin drop, and I'm like freaked out. Like this is just like scare to me. Like I'm actually scared, even though I talk to a lot of, I mean, it just doesn't do it for me. And it's just like this is like a very like cold and impersonal environment. I don't like all this quiet, but other people like think that's great. There are certain cultures that like White and Case has a very unique culture. There's different law firms, like in Quinn Emanuel, like different law firms have different cultures. And so, if you're in a place where it's not comfortable for you, and sometimes you go to law firms and you can tell that there's, or you work there and you can tell that there's a lot of gossip and things going on. That's not a good fit for you. So if you don't like that, so that's just, how it works. And if you're in a law firm that doesn't, match the kind of person you are, then you should be in another law firm because you're going to be comfortable. You're going to do better in a law firm that has a culture, that supports the kind of person you are. I mean, that's just how it works. Okay, let me just hear. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, next question. Okay, I have job hop quite a bit, usually every 2 years, but I don't consider myself unmanageable. I feel like that I'm not the right fit. How can I market myself? If I feel that I'm not the right fit, how can I better market myself? You can market yourself in a very effective way, even if you worked at lots of law firms, by looking like you're committed to that practice area. You can market yourself in a very effective way by moving up. So moving to a firm that's better in your practice area where, you're going to interview them, you're going to be excited about more responsibility. You could market yourself in a way where you have very detailed descriptions of what you've done and you're excited about it. And when they look at your resume, they can see you're doing more and more work, or you have an extra page in your resume that talks about nothing but the work that you've done. Like I did this kind of thing, I did this type of thing. Like someone that does that is very excited, and law firms like that if they see that. You can market yourself by removing things that aren't related to your practice area when you were in law school, or jobs you had prior to law school that aren't related to your practice area. You can do all that, but if you look like you're committed to your practice area, you look like you're moving up in terms of is related to that, then you're going to be very marketable. So that's important. Okay, next question. I went to a top 5 law school, top 10%, partner and associate for 10 years at a top 50 big law firm, left solo practice for family years, 20 years solo. Is it realistic to seek return to a law firm commercial litigation practice? Yes. So if you do commercial litigation on your own, then yes, you can get into, and if you have decent sized clients and you're billing them a decent amount, like, and you're doing well, then yes, a larger law firm will hire you because they want your business. But typically, what are they going to pay you? They're going to pay you about 1/3 of your collections, like how much you're bringing in, or they're going to pay you 50%, or they may pay you more, but you're probably not going to make as much money as you would in a law firm because they're going to take a percentage of the business that you bring in. Sometimes they'll have work that they can give you, so they'll pay you for that, but they're going to pay you a percentage. So even if they pay you 50%, that means you're going to make half of what you're making. But what are you going to get working in a law firm? You're going to get, you're going to get the ability to have other people help you. You're going to get the ability to have office space paid for, billing paid for, legal secretaries, the prestige of the law firm, which is going to enable you to get more clients. You're going to get all that. And so you have to make a decision. Does that work for me? And is that something where where I want to work with other people, where I'm happy to share a collection of my fees, where I want that support, where I don't have to worry about hiring secretaries and paralegals, and where I don't have to worry about where I can do more marketing to get better clients. Those are all the things you need to worry about when you have a solo practice and you're trying to work in a law firm. But if you have enough work, like if you have $500,000 in work, or even 400,000, there are law firms that will hire you because they want that 200,000 or they want that 250,000 because that's what helps build the firm. Law firms that are hiring partners want partners with business because that's how law firms that's how law firms make money. So of course they're going to hire you. Okay, so last question. If anybody has any further questions, I can answer them. This is the last one. I'm energized by court work, so when I go on interviews, how can I ensure I'm working in that area? I have accepted jobs that never allowed me to go to court. Yeah, if you want to do court work, then you should get jobs with law firms that want you to do that. There are lots of law firms that have people that just write briefs and things, and that's what they want to do. They don't want to go to court. I had a guy yesterday I was working with. He was antitrust and mass tort litigator. He had brought in huge verdicts. Like, so far this year, he brought in 25 million settlements. I'm sorry. The year before, he brought in 30. but he didn't want to do court work. He just didn't like it. And so he wanted to go to a place that would allow where he could, bring in the clients and do the non-court work, where someone would do the court work for him. He also wanted to go in house. Like, even though he was extremely successful, he wanted to do that. He just didn't want to work in a law firm, and he didn't want to do court work. So law firms will hire people that want to do court work because they need people to go to court. So you can get those type of jobs, but you have to be able to market yourself to those type of jobs, and you have to learn how to find that type of job. And so there's always going to be a job that will do that type of work, and where you can do that type of work. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being on this webinar. I apologize that I was late. I hope this helped you. I mean, this is, again, one of the most important things you can listen to if you spent all this time in this webinar, which it looks like almost everyone that started did, which is great. It's going to definitely help you. It can change the direction of your life and career, and I hope if it did, you let me know in the future, because it can, you will be a much better attorney for this. And I have profound respect for people that spend time on these, because when you do, you learn stuff that other people don't know, and you have a much more successful career. And very few people, when you take, if we invite 10,000 people to this webinar, and 2,000 show up, and the 2,000 that show up, are people that are really concerned about their careers, and that and they do better, and so they're willing to listen to information in the middle of the day. So that's very good, and I hope it helps you. And then certainly every week we do these type of webinars, and so if you think about questions over the course of the week that you want to answer, I will answer them on the webinar too next week. So thank you everyone, and I will be back next week. Bye-bye.